All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Wargames podcast number 36. It's good to be back yet again. We've already had a fuck ton of drop frames, so Cockcast is being its usual self. Joining me tonight, as per usual, is the Lobster, and also with us is Nichols. Good evening, douchebag and lady.
Which one's which?
Well, I guess it could be a little bit of a toss-up.
Indeed.
And let's see here. Good evening again to everybody in chat. And Aaron, I don't need to shorten shit. The intro is 8 minutes long. If you think that is forever, I feel sorry for your future wife. 8 minutes is nothing. So I know myself and Loster tonight's kind of a whatever night. We don't really give a shit about the podcast tonight because we're both just looking forward to next week's podcast because next week is number 37, which for us is important because it's going to be a fucking 2-hour basically blowjob on Kevin Smith. So next week we're going to be
movies in general, I think.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mostly Kevin Smith, though.
Yeah. So next week we'll be spending quite a bit of time talking about Kevin Smith. But for tonight, what we're going to be talking about is actually what you guys didn't get to see from me on Sunday, which was the Task Force Bravo operation, or sorry, FTX, that I was supposed to be kind of overseeing in a Zeus role, but I wasn't able to because the radiator on my computer decided to up and take a shit. And just out of nowhere, it was fucking weird as hell. I was in game, we were, in Zeus, getting everything ready. It was about 10 minutes before we were about to start loading everybody in, and all of a sudden, all the fans on my system fucking, boom, crank up to 100%. And I was like, what the fuck? My fans never go to 100%. And then I look, and of course, all my fucking temperatures shoot up to like 85 degrees. And I was like, what the fuck? And shut my system down. And then I look, and the radiator, or the pump, is sending it at no RPMs. So, yeah, fucking radiator just decided to die out of nowhere. Again, very fucking weird. And still, we're getting fucking frame drops because fucking Comcast. So, nothing I can do about it. If I call and yell at them anymore, I'm gonna end up in jail for fucking domestic terrorism. So, the reason I was in kind of a advisory role Sunday for Ares was because it was Loster's first night as a primary Zeus operator for the 506th. And again, my radiator fucking died 10 minutes before we start loading everybody in. So it was kind of like, here you go, have fun. And thankfully, between Aaron and a fucking conniving wife, I have a new radiator in the machine, obviously, and all the shit's running good.
Did she plot that behind your back?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I thought you knew about it.
Oh, no. I had no fucking idea until it showed up at the door. No, none whatsoever. That was completely plotted without my knowledge whilst I was fucking scrubbing my ass in the shower. Yeah. I told Aaron, I was like, motherfuckers will be trying to figure out for years how one of my best friends and my wife conniving behind my back worked out to my benefit.
It's nefarious.
Yeah. So, as I said, this was, Loster's first time as primary, first time for an entire task force. Which is why you guys are actually watching his video, his Twitch stream from Sunday. So before we actually get into the operation and all of that, me and Loster were in the server hours ahead of time to start building the mission and everything, because I knew it was going to take a while. And I knew there was going to be things that, I would have to change or, critique and stuff like that. So firstly, going into it, Loster, going into like building the mission and stuff and first getting into the server. What were kind of your thoughts when you first went in and started building the mission itself? Were you kind of, I guess, were you kind of nervous at all about, having to build a mission for an entire task force?
Nervous, definitely is a good word. It's different. Like, if you've seen my stream in the past, if you know anything about me, people know that for a time I was a squad leader in Havoc 3. I did that for several months, like 6 months or something like that. So as a squad leader, it's our responsibility to conduct trainings every week. And generally speaking, I would use that opportunity to Zeus while I had my 2IC run the squad, and then I would critique afterwards or step in or whatever. But when you're Zeusing for 10 people or like 10, 12, 15 people, which I've done for like squad trainings and little fun ops and things like that, there's a world of difference between that and Zeusing for what, 60 people? Or, right? 50?
Yeah, about 60.
So, yes, I was nervous because there's a big difference between having a little hiccup and fucking up for a squad training because it's your guys, they don't really care, and screwing up in front of an entire task force, which includes Drum, which includes Hammer, which traditionally will include you, which includes every single person that, like,
Everybody you don't want to fuck up in front
yeah,
of.
yeah. So yes, I was nervous, and I'm glad that you took the time with me to say, "Hey, let's do this now." 4 hours ahead of time, and it took 4 hours. Actually, it took 4 hours, and I still wasn't done. I still had a lot that I wanted to do. Um, so definitely nervous. I was always wondering, like, okay, how am I gonna fuck this up? Because it's kind of
Right.
something which you've pointed out, I'm kind of notorious for is like making like just my head's in the right place, my heart's in the right place. I'm stupid, so I make dumb mistakes sometimes. And I did make a few dumb mistakes. If you pay attention to the video while it's going on, you'll see that like there are times where like I put guys down and then I accidentally like click my mouse and drag it over.
Oh
I've
yeah.
just dragged an entire platoon of bad guys 50 meters in the wrong direction.
Everybody has done that.
So now I have
Everybody
to fix
has.
it.
I mean, I still do that. Still to this day, it happens. That one's pretty fucking common to make that mistake.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's like I'm doing this now. For me, Brewer, I don't know how the rest of the I don't know how anybody else in this unit like views you when they're working under you or when they're trying to work for you. My goal, it's honestly, it's like what Godfather says in Generation Kill. I just don't want to piss off the first sergeant. I just don't want to make I live in fear that one day I'll do something that General Mattis doesn't like. That's how I
Yeah.
feel about you, honestly. So I'm making this mission like please just don't fuck it up. Don't make it look stupid because it's the whole task force is riding on this, and I don't want to fucking get chewed out over something stupid. So that
Mhm.
was in the back of my head the whole time. Just don't piss off Brewer, whatever you do.
Right. Um, oh, and Bad Wolf ended up going to see Bad Wolves in concert and said they were awesome. That's good to hear. Glad you enjoyed them. Like I was saying, those guys are really fucking good. I'm glad they're getting the recognition they deserve. Um, so as you said, we were in there. I guess it was 4 hours early. I don't remember exactly what time we hopped in
Yeah,
there.
or maybe it was 3. We started at like 7:30 game time, and then when the mission started, it was like 10:40 game time. So about maybe 3 hours.
Okay. Um, so yeah, that's one of the, like I had told you, when we started building, I always get in there super early, just so I have everything done in case something does come up. So I'm usually in there about that time anyways. It wasn't just because, okay, you're new, you need to get this down. I knew obviously it was going to take longer, but I usually take that long anyways, just to fucking, so I got everything 100% ready. And if the tiniest little fucking thing pops up, it's not like, oh, well, you're going to have to wait on getting these new fucking helicopters spawned in because I don't have time because I'm still building the mission. It's like, sure, I got nothing else to do. I'm sitting here fucking twiddling my thumbs.
Right.
So we started building the mission, and it was the basic premise of the FTX was for them to fast rope into a small town, move across a fairly large open area, and clear out another town, another large urban area. And that second area, the primary objective, was heavily garrisoned by enemy troops and some vehicles here and there. So I basically just set you to task, hey, build it up, put things where you think they should be, so on and so forth, garrison the guys how you think they should be, and so on. And about an hour or so before load-in time is when I was like, okay, so what do you think? You think you're ready? This and that. And then I went through and we kind of broke down the entire AO from like block by block in the city. And I, would go through and be like, okay, this machine gun that's here, instead of putting it on this flat roof where it has no protection and you have to, put objects down, put these sandbags around, you can move it one building over that's got already a half wall up on the roof and you don't have to put any objects down on the map, so you're saving the server. Or, this squad that's garrisoned, why would 10 guys in a squad each be in separate buildings? You would have, 2 or 3 guys in this building, 2 or 3 guys in this building, so on and so forth. Try and clump them together a little bit more. Or, okay, this vehicle is here, but what can it actually do here? What are its line of sights? How effective is it here? It's not effective at all. Let's put it over here where it's got a little bit of elevation, it's a little bit better protected. Now, instead of having a 300-meter sight line, it's got a click and a half sight line, and it can be properly used the way it realistically would be used. And so little things like that, it is something that comes with time with Zeusing, and something that, especially those of us that Zeused earlier, like in earlier times for the unit, it's something that we had to just kind of, either you had to already know it or you had to pick it up on the fly, because we didn't get trained in the same fashion when, like back when I first started Zeusing. Nobody was like, hey, use some common sense here. They were just like, all right, yeah, do whatever. So at least I hope it helps to have someone kind of walk through it with you and say, hey, get down on the ground level. Look through this guy's eyes. Would you want to sit there? If that was you, would you want to sit in that position? No, then why the fuck would you set your troops up in that position? Would you want to set your vehicle up in that spot if you were the vehicle commander? No, then don't set a fucking vehicle there. Put it somewhere else. So I mean, for you building it, do you feel like your mindset changed a little bit after I went through and kind of pointed those things out to you, and like, hey, do this, and this, and this is why this makes sense, and this is why this doesn't make sense. Do you feel like you understood it a little bit more, kind of the mindset behind it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you're looking right now, Brewer, what I'm doing is when you had to leave because your CPU shit fucked up, all of the units that you garrisoned ungarrisoned.
Oh, yep.
So me and Tosco had went in and fixed it. But absolutely, like because I have an idea in my head. I've never fucking Zeused anything this big before. I don't know what it entails. It's like my first day at work. Like you're the guy. You've been doing this. You know where all the shit goes. I understand that I can bring my own personal like twist to this. I can bring my own little flavor to it. However, like there are some basic fundamental principles about this, and like managing server resources is a big one, which I hadn't taken into account. I was putting sandbag bunker. I was wasting time building bunkers and shit because I thought it looked cool. But in the meantime, it's like, yeah, but you can just put it one next door.
Yeah.
And it works just as fine, and they have just as much protection.
That's not necessarily the wrong school of thought, because it is realistic. I mean, you would build up fucking compounds like that. It's just we can't, because we have to, think about server resources. It's just like, you were in the room when Hammer was in there. And for those of you guys that don't know, Hammer was the task force commander for Bravo that night. And I was telling him, like, look, you're going to have to basically simulate that there's civilians in the town. Because I can't put them down. We don't have the overhead for it on the server. But just, basically pretend there are civilians in the fucking town, because I can't physically put them down, but you should be operating in a, mindset that there are civilians in the area.
Yeah. I was curious though, is it because so many guys respond? Because I remember like on our last deployment, like some of the cops that were constructed were insanely elaborate, and that's a lot of shit that got put down to build these cops.
Yeah, but
But
there wouldn't
did
be
that
as many troops down.
right? Okay, that's why. So there's like a give and take thing.
Mhm,
Okay, okay,
exactly. You can have big old huge cops built. I mean, it's gonna have cause issues. Like you're gonna get fucking frame issues and stuff like that. Especially in these situations with air assault. Like that's another thing that people oftentimes don't realize is anytime the entirety of the ground element is moving all together, there's going to be frame issues and desync like what you're, going through right here talking with Hammer. Anytime you're moving 60 guys around in one very centralized area, it's going to cause issues on the server. Doesn't matter.
right.
You could have absolutely nothing down on the server at all. No AI, no objects, no nothing. Just the 60 people in there. Put them in helicopters and try to fly them around, and there's going to be slight desync and lag and shit like that. It's just fucking ArmA being ArmA. So then you add AI on top of that, and then objects on top of that. And that's when you really start having problems. So like, say in this exact situation for this operation, if the task force would have went in gun trucks instead of Blackhawks, there wouldn't have been near as much lag because you don't have as many bodies in as small of an area. You got fucking 12 guys or whatever per Blackhawk. Well, actually more than that per Blackhawk. So it causes more problems. Same as like if you go in on foot, the guys are way more spread out, so you don't have near as much fucking desync. But you jam everybody into 4 birds, or even worse, into 2 Chinooks, then you really start having problems. Especially when you have a fuck ton of troops down or a fuck ton of objects down. It's just one of those like, there's not really much we can do but deal with it. We can delete a little bit of fucking AI and that's about it.
Right.
So and I haven't even gotten to watch any of the operation. Obviously I've had plenty of fucking time, but I don't generally watch our operations because I'm in them, so I don't really care to fucking watch and see what happened.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
So once the operation kind of kicked off, once they actually got out into the AO and fast roped in and shit, we had set up the LZ to be a hot LZ, but for them to not know it was going to be hot LZ. We basically hid everybody indoors. They weren't up on rooftops or any, easily visible positions or anything like that. They were all inside. So they couldn't, the A10 scanning the fucking LZ couldn't see them with that fucking ridiculously OP fucking TGP. So they get to the LZ, start fast roping in. How was it for you? Again, your first time Zeusing for the task force, the birds come in. Did you start remote controlling guys and firing some rounds up there, or did you just have Tosco do that? Because Tosco was the assistant.
Right. Yeah, I was traditionally the way that you have it set up is that the primary has 2 assistants, and just to back up just a little bit before I answer that question, my job, as it's been outlined, is I think you said it to me, is that at the end of the day I shouldn't be remote controlling anybody if I don't need to.
Right.
My job is to build the mission. I spawn the units in. I spawn the reinforcements in. I control the ebbs and the flows of how OPFOR responds to everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it's my assistants' jobs to it's their jobs to remote control. It's their jobs to go in and say, okay, okay, well, I'll keep suppression. They basically should be remote controlling all the fucking time.
Yeah.
They want to create this immersive experience of getting shot at and putting pressure on the task force, so they're not just mowing through the AI.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, yeah, it was exhilarating. I did end up remote controlling a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit because it was just me and Tosco.
Right.
And
Because
I
you
wanted
needed
to, yeah, I wanted to basically give the pilots a little scare. I had Tosco grab the RPG gunner. I don't know exactly how that went for him. Maybe Nichols can answer because she was here for this, and I know that I don't know which bird got the RPG shot at it, but I'm pretty sure the pilot kind of pooped his pants a little bit because
That's totally what I was gonna do, by the way, before I fucking dropped out, is I was gonna take one of the RPG gunners and come out on the fucking rooftop and pull a Black Hawk down and put a fucking RPG across their tail.
Yeah.
Yeah, to actually answer that, that was bird 1. So that had myself, basically all of 2-1 plus Lieutenant Hammersmain and Lieutenant Williams in it. Right after the fact that I got on the ground, which the LZ for us was kind of bad because we had a wall right underneath us. So I fell onto the wall and then fell off that, broke my legs. Next thing I hear, RPG goes streaming past that fucking Black Hawk, which is being flown by Chief Bowman, who immediately, just after everybody got out of that, just booked the hell out of there.
Yeah, he was like, "Yep, I'm getting the fuck out of this neighborhood."
Yeah, it was just like, nope, this is not clear. And then all of us on the ground is like, who the hell said this LZ was freaking clear? We were all just sitting there like, what the is going on here?
It was thunder. It was the best part is you hear thunder. Thunder tells Hammer that LZ is clear, which for all intents and purposes they don't know. They
Right.
can't see inside the buildings. It looks clear to them. So you hear Hammer call it out over the net that LZ is clear of civies and OPFOR. I'm like, no, it's not. Wait till you get here, you'll see.
That was like with Saturday, because I was the task force commander for Saturday and Drum was Zeusing. You know, it was very much so the same thing that Bravo did, but in reverse. And not really close, a few hundred meters away from our LZ, our primary LZ, there was a BTR sitting there at a roadblock. And it was looking away. I knew it wasn't necessarily an immediate threat to the birds. But again, with the knowledge of the AI and how they can be kind of unpredictable, I guess, I made the decision to deviate from the primary LZ and move all 4 birds to the secondary LZ. And yeah, afterwards, Drum was like, "You were perfectly fine. Like, that BTR wouldn't have engaged." And I was like, "Yeah, I wasn't taking that chance because the last fucking thing I need is goddamn bird getting shot down with, 16 guys in it or whatever." So the initial insert, I'm guessing the AI that were there got mopped up fairly quickly.
Yeah,
Considering there was only a squad there.
a squad like 8 or 9, I think.
Yeah.
I grabbed a couple. I grabbed PK. I grabbed the RPK guy, the PKM, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I unloaded like a belt and a half at one of the helicopters that was still. There was like I stepped out on the balcony. You'll see it because they're about to insert in like maybe 5 minutes. I step out on the balcony and I just unload at one of the Blackhawks. As the guys are fast roping down and like you can see the fucking when you're on the ground and you're looking up and you're the one shooting at them. It's really intense because you're unloading at the helicopter and then the helicopter deploys flares and waves off. And I'm like, holy fuck, dude, this is hawk down shit right here.
This is fucking Michael Bay going on.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I grabbed a couple of guys here and there, maybe 2, I think, during that insert, and had them like engage and fuck with the ships that were landing. And I think Nichols actually downed me because I grabbed one guy and I'm like, oh fuck, he's got a fucking Lee Enfield. Great, this is gonna be great. This would be really scary. And I can hear Nichols because you can hear proximity chat for those of the people who don't know. You can hear the proximity chat of everyone who's near you, and you hear Nichols like calling out that she's clearing a corner. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna peek around the corner. I'm gonna fucking nail her when she peeks over. But nope. She peeks the corner, I shoot, I miss, and because I have a fucking Lee Enfield, it takes me 17 seconds to rack another round in, and she drops me. So I'm like, oh well, I guess I'm done remote controlling now.
Actually, to be fair, the guy dropped me too.
Ha!
Really?
You did miss.
Yeah, the guy dropped me.
I thought I missed.
No, you actually did hit me, and I dropped for a moment, and then got back up. I had to have somebody come by and actually deal with that.
Okay. Oh, well, we'll see when it gets there. But yeah, it was really really intense. Yeah.
So after the insert got all done, they had to push across that big ass fucking open valley, basically, and move eastward. How did that go? How was the movement across that valley, especially with that fucking tank sitting up there?
Well, here's the thing: is that the tank kind of I kept the tank quiet until I could bring them in a little closer. However, they crossed the valley. I spawned some dudes on either side of the valley in the mountains,
Mm-hmm.
and they started taking pot shots at them, and they returned fire. I saw them pop smoke. The platoon was in like I guess you can call it a wedge, like a platoon blob wedge kind of thing. Um, and they were pushing forward, and whatever squad was on point ended up like moving really far ahead of the platoon. So what I did was, because you ran me through a crash course of everything Zeus related, and I started using the suppression scripts for everything. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna give him some Michael Bay shit right now.
Mm-hmm.
What I forgot was how long this is actually
Oh,
continuous fire.
is that when you did the fucking GMG suppression?
The GMGs, yeah, I put the suppression script on the GMGs, and luckily my target wasn't on top of the platoon. But when you see it, it's like holy! It's like 30 seconds, just relentless GMG fire, just explosions going off. Like it was just, and then I had the MGs opening up, and they're just fucking racket. Just you could just hear, you can hear the rounds like whizzing past everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fucking insane being on that side of it and just suppressing an entire fucking platoon with MG fire in 40 millimeter.
Yeah,
And
inadvertent 30-second long suppression fire
yeah,
from a fucking
yeah,
Mark 19.
yeah. It's some scary shit, man.
That's like you said though. At least you were, purposely off target, if you will.
Yeah, yeah,
Because yeah, like in that situation, and I know you would have felt like shit, and I would have felt like shit. Any of the Ares operators would have felt like shit if you would have put that suppression module on an actual squad, and this dude's just letting loose for 30 fucking seconds with 40 mics. Like there's no way that had you hit point blank on a squad, people would have died because they would have been so
yeah.
injured. There's no way they could have gotten everybody back up medically before they bled out.
Well,
Um,
I was thinking about how I would react to them. Okay, well if this like lands and fucks up a whole squad, I'm gonna delete the fucking GMG and I'll just Zeus heal everyone to get them up as
right,
fast as I possibly can because that's not fair,
right.
Like they're in this to have fun.
That's those situations where if they get fucked because of us screwing up, we need to fix it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can imagine being on the ground and just having 30 seconds of unadulterated fucking 40 mics going off a few meters from me. That would be awesome.
How was it, Nichols?
It was pretty terrifying. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty terrifying because as 2-1, we're tip of the spear for Havoc too. So we kind of were in the thick of that, and hearing it go, boop, 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 it's like, oh shit, we are going to die.
Yeah,
Luckily, we didn't, and none of it hit us. But it was pretty scary at the time. We were scrambling to find cover, trying to figure out where it was coming from. That's for sure.
yeah, I would not have wanted to be on the receiving end of that. So they got pushed across the valley, and finally got into the actual town, and started clearing the town. And from your end to top high, how did it look as the task force moved through the town? Because I know the other night when you Zeused with us, you had remarked about watching a task force from that view, all moving, kind of with one with a purpose. That it was cool to see a task force of that size move. So how was it from that view to watch a task force move through a town?
Honestly, it was like watching someone like cut the lawn. Like I was looking from the top down, and then as the platoon entered the town, you start seeing them systematically clear. Like, and you can hear platoon HQ, you can hear Lieutenant Williams like assigning squads their phase lines, their sectors that they're responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting to watch the entire platoon spread out and go block to block to block, house to house, clearing, and then you turn your head for a second. When you come back, honestly, it's like watching the lawn get cut, because now like half the city's been shaved off, and it's like it's all blue for now, and they're just creeping forward, and it's like
Yeah, all
I
those
don't know.
little red dots are now black dots.
Yeah, and it was really it's just having never seen it from like I mean I've watched you stream Zeus,
Right, but
but it's
it's
so
different when you're actually there and you can move the
yeah
camera around yourself.
yeah and yeah it was I dude there's I dare you like I I mean obviously a lot of it like this unit is a byproduct of like being in the 15th, which is like you know was not it's very similar to what we do. It's just a Marine milsim unit as opposed to an
I
Army
don't,
milsim unit.
I don't think this unit is any longer really a byproduct of the
Right, I'm
15th,
just like
considering
it's
there's like 4 people in the entire unit that were in the
yeah
15th.
yeah. I mean like it's creation basically is what I'm saying. But like it'd be hard pressed to find any other like anything else that does like this. Like watching this from the Zeus POV. I mean, you know, obviously I played a lot as boots on the ground, but seeing it like
Oh, you mean
how
to find something else like this coordinated
yeah this
on this
coordinated
size?
yeah like people train for this shit in this game, and it's like and it shows. Like there's no greater example of watching an entire platoon clear a city systematically, not randomly, not retardedly, going door to door, making sure corners are clear and their backs are covered, and you got it's just it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's why it's, it's one of those especially, for us, like for me and Drum and even for fucking Weewoo, like when we're Zeusing or even when we're on the ground, people constantly in the chats, somebody wants to fucking run off at the cock holster, no fucking this and that, and so on and so forth. And it's like, dude, okay, if you think you're so much better, then, show me a video of you doing it better. Or, show me the link to your community of a few hundred active people that are doing it better than us. Oh, you can't produce that? Then shut the fuck up. It's that simple.
Right, and like consistently, it's not like we have like our good days and bad days. Although we do have good days and bad days, but we consistently like get the job gets done, like over and over and over again. Like the shit
Right.
gets done.
Well, that's why, like, especially, when we do have those bad days and we fucking smoke everybody, it's like, our standards are incredibly fucking high. Our standards are high for a fucking reason because of, what we're fucking doing and what we're trying to accomplish and the fact that nobody else could fucking do that. So, when we do have our bad day, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad of a day. For us, it's a fucking bad day, and people are gonna get fucking busted for it. But in the overall grand scheme, it's like, yeah, that was actually pretty fucking good because, well, nobody fucking killed each other, so that's an automatic plus right off the fucking bat because they weren't fucking killing each other at the spawn. Nobody's fucking yelling and screaming over fucking global or side chat or fucking whatever. But yeah, I've said that from very early on, especially with Zeusing, because again, you get that bird's eye perspective that nobody else gets. I mean, there's in the entire unit for the 100 and whatever fucking active billets that we have, um, of all of those fucking people, there are, is it 11? There's 11 people qualified to Zeus for the 506 out of, like I said, 175 or 177 active billets. 11 of those people are qualified to Zeus for this unit. So we, lucky 11, have the greatest fucking seat in the house to be able to watch this unit operate. And it is very impressive to watch from a bird's eye view and see a task force work together. Not just the infantry, not just the fucking infantry platoon on the ground, but the task force as a whole. To watch an entire task force of, basically 50 guys on the ground, a little bit over 50 guys on the ground, and air assets all come together towards a singular goal and accomplish that goal, it's impressive as fuck to watch. Like, very impressive.
Fucking Hardman with his fucking stats. See that in your chat?
Oh yeah, as far as active, I'm talking about as terms of all billets, not just what's filled. So for you, Nichols, which by the way, I guess we'll get the congratulations out of the way. Nichols is no longer a PV2, everybody.
Oh god.
So now that you've got a little bit of time in, whopping 60 days, how was this FTX for you? Was this the kind of biggest urban environment you've taken on so far?
Yes, I would say this last past FTX that we were on was the biggest urban environment I've ever, in a sense of not doing like the stupidity that you see in like the public stuff. It's the biggest urban environment I've actually taken on from a tactical standpoint. Yes.
So what did you think of it, of moving through that town and kind of having to go door to door, clearing rooms and shit?
I unfortunately can't say too much because once
JK.
once we got to the north of the town, we got flanked by some guys, and due to a technical error, with the CPR mechanic, I went KIA and had to and sat out for the vast majority of it until near the end when I got reinserted, and then I was at the very end of everything. So unfortunately, I didn't get the whole.
Well, if it was a tech problem, you should have messaged dipshit here and been like,
Yeah,
"Hey."
you could have grabbed an
Well,
Android message
it wasn't. Yeah, see, the problem is we didn't
Yeah,
necessarily
you didn't.
know it was a tech issue. Like nobody, uh, Specialist Rainey, who's our squad medic, never mentioned to me, like never sent me any message saying, "Oh yeah, that was a tech issue." It's just I died, and then it was like, okay, well,
Right, you
I
didn't have any
personally,
idea at the time, and there's no
yeah,
way you would know.
yeah, I personally didn't see anybody push CPR on me at the time, but from what I heard, Specialist Gates did, and so it was an issue where it was just a tech issue that I found out after the fact. So it wasn't something I knew at the
Right,
time. So I thought I was just a legit KIA. So I waited around, and then that's just what happened.
right. Which obviously sucks. I mean, we've all had it happen, and it fucking sucks every time.
Yeah.
For me though, I've only had it happen once where I got KIA'd and I was waiting back at the base for maybe 10 minutes or so. The only other time I've KIA'd, we were pretty much, well, the one time we were immediately reinserted. The other time, we didn't need to be reinserted because the airfield was being fucking attacked when we respawned. That was fun. But when we were defending Electro during Red Hammer, I talk about it a lot in OSA. We got hit with BM-21 rockets on top of the hospital, and like our whole squad got wiped. And we had to fucking get a reinsert bird back in. In the entire maybe 10 minutes or so that me and Frankels and everybody were sitting there waiting for that bird to come back in, the entire time all we were thinking was like, dude, our guys are getting fucked up. Like, we're not there, we're not pulling our sector, we're not doing our job. Like, our guys are in there getting fucked up right now. Like, none of us cared that we weren't necessarily playing the game. We were more so pissed off that our fucking buddies were probably getting killed as well. Luckily, they weren't. Well, 1-3 got pretty fucked up. But, that's what kind of pissed us off more than anything. And I think that's kind of unique to a unit like this, where everybody is so close and there is a lot of camaraderie within the unit. Because in a situation like that, more often than not, guys aren't going to be pissed off that, oh, well, I waited 2 weeks to play this mission or whatever, and I finally got in here and I only got to play for 10 minutes and I'm pissed off and this and that. It's more likely than not going to be, yeah, I'm pissed off that other guys got downed or got killed because I wasn't there to do my job. Like, that's more common, I think. So moving through the town, you didn't get much experience in that because you were fucking stuck back at the base.
Yeah.
So, Loster, how was it from your point of view? What did you think of kind of the pace that the task force was able to clear out a town that heavily garrisoned? Because you guys have seen the Zeus view a couple of times now of the actual town itself and can see how heavily garrisoned it was. What did you think of how quickly they were able to move through it, or how slowly they moved through it?
I mean, quickly is the word, I guess. I mean, they they were moving faster than I could like, because we had to front. I
Get
had to
used
front.
to it
We had
with
to.
Havoc too.
Yeah, right. We had to front load all the OPFOR in the up front in the town,
Hmm.
and then start backfilling them as they cleared the town, while still remembering to delete corpses and all that other shit. So, I mean, they cleared the whole town, I think, and they from start to finish, from from off the ropes to extraction. I think was only like a little over an hour, which, I mean, it goes
It's
by quick.
Oh yeah, it
So
goes by very quick. Oh, and here we are looking at the part
here's this
with
is where I shoot
yeah,
Nichols.
you and Nichols going head on head.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah, I said that kind of jokingly, in terms of get used to that for Havoc too, because you're gonna be Zeusing for him. But you find that after time, especially for Zeusing with multiple task forces, which you won't necessarily do uh, nearly as often as what I've done, but you you tend to learn very quickly kind of the strengths and weaknesses of each task force, um, and you'll find yourself you just automatically make some missions more difficult, uh, depending upon the task force, depending upon who's flying, who's doing so on and so forth. Um, you'll kind of change things up to suit that task force. Uh, and it's constantly changing, which is the other thing. Some maybe over this 3 month period, Havoc One is really fucking good at mount operations, but they're dog shit out in the open in react to contact. 6 months later, they are fucking outstanding in react to contact drills out in the open, but they're shit in the bed in CQC, or they have horrible target acquisition and elimination for ArmA. It's weird, but it's also kind of cool how you see the task forces kind of evolve and change over time, and how you have to evolve and change your Zeusing for each task force. Not just a strict, like, oh, it's Havoc 2, so we have to put a fuck ton of stuff down because they're just going to steamroll it.
Right.
That could be the case for 6 months. After that 6 months, you could whack them with a really hard mission, and their confidence gets fucking rattled a little bit. And then the very next mission after that, they completely shit the bed and do the worst operation they've ever had. And then it's like, what is this even the same platoon? And then it takes 2-3 months for them to get back to where they were. And that's pretty common. And like I said, it's cool to watch from a Zeus perspective because you get to see all that shit go down. Especially, like I said, for me, getting to Zeus for multiple task forces, especially over time, over years now of doing it, it's cool to watch the task forces do that. And it's especially cool to watch them kind of learn and grow. And then at the same time, not necessarily forget things, but, as you have old people go out and new people come in, you have to relearn those same skills. So,
Right.
you can see that happen when, say, a very experienced squad leader goes to reserves and a team leader steps up that isn't as experienced and maybe wasn't quite ready for it, or is technically ready for it, just they're going to make mistakes that the other squad leader learned a long time ago. And you'll see that squad fuck up more. And you'll go, yeah, so and so would have never made that mistake. But so and so's not there anymore. He did make that mistake a year ago. You just didn't see it,
Right.
you know? So it's like I said earlier, we're very lucky to have the view that we do. Now, at the same time, we're very unlucky because we have what is arguably the most difficult fucking job in the entire unit. The reason it's most difficult is A, the AI are fucking retarded. That's not a secret to anyone. Everybody that plays fucking ArmA is well aware of that, especially on a scale like we do. B, everything we do hinges on you doing a good job. If the operations or the FTXs aren't good, no point in anybody being here. So
Yep.
it has a incredibly high amount of responsibility, or an amount of responsibility that a lot of people don't, even if they say, you know, I understand the responsibility and this and this and this, you don't. I don't care how many squad trainings you've, Zeused. You do not understand the responsibility of Zeusing for an entire task force, especially with the CO, the XO, and the first sergeant all in the same fucking operation until you actually do it.
Yep.
Like Loster said, he was a squad leader for quite a while. He Zeused a lot of fucking squad trainings. You were still nervous as shit Zeusing your first FTX.
Absolutely. I don't care what I don't care what, you know what I mean? I don't care how much experience I think I have. I've never done this job. I've never done this job.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's completely different. I try to like not stress myself out about it. Like once everything got rolling, I felt really comfortable. I started realizing how to, but I mean at the same time, it's like once they got through the first line of defenses, I don't have time to go back and build more MG nests or GMG nests and
Right.
shit like that. Those are things that I need to work on my own and figure out how I'm gonna perfect it for the next in 2 weeks from now for the next time.
Exactly.
So because once you get through the first line of defenses, it's literally just like BTRs and small arms. It's like there's no more MG nests, there's no more AGS 30s, there's no more. It's just house to house, street to street combat,
and really the biggest example I can give guys of like that situation of not really. It's not that it doesn't matter how much experience you have, but it doesn't come into account as much as you would think. And the biggest example of that is Libru. I mean, we started doing shit with him. I don't know. I think it's a little over a year ago now, close to a year now that he started doing some Zeusing for us. On the squirrel missions. And the first time I approached him about it, he he was joking that was like his goal when he started Zeusing was to Zeus missions for Drum. And I thought he was joking. And he was dead serious. Like he actually had that in like his about me and shit. That one of his goals was to Zeus for Drum in the 506. And the very first night that he Zeused for us, he was nervous as fuck. He was terrified of screwing up because he didn't want to basically lose the gig. He didn't want one of us saying, "Yeah, you're not welcome back here."
Yep.
And it's this, it's the same thing for all of our Zeus operators. Like it's not just it's because it was a squirrel mission, and we make videos out of those and shit like that. Like no, it's like that for every single operation. There's so much stress on our Zeus operators because they know, and they've been made, well aware by me. Look, you fuck this up, I will not hesitate in the slightest to fire you on the spot. No fucking explanation, nothing. I will fire your ass with a quickness because of all those fucking red circles that you guys see on your screen right now. The task force commanders are responsible for the well-being of all of those red circles. We as Ares operators are responsible for not wasting their entire fucking night. And that's something that like we have to take very seriously. Because you fuck up and make a really boring mission or just fucking rape everybody to a ridiculous level, that entire task force just had a shitty Saturday or Sunday night, and now they
Yep.
did just waste weeks of preparation for nothing.
And I mean, and it would reflect in, I mean, for the months that I was, not a Zeus, um, you would know when certain people were Zeusing, like, cause it's like, oh, here we fucking go, like this is really
Oh yeah,
fucking hard, like, you know what I mean? Like you would know when certain Zeus operators, who was being Aries that night,
yeah.
and
First and
it's
third Sundays, anytime fucking Zeusy McDouchebag was Zeus, and you're like, yeah, here we go. We're about to get fucking raped by mortars and armor.
there we go, and it's like there comes a point where it's like, oh, this isn't fun anymore, like this. Like, do you guys like? And the first question that Aries always asks is, "You guys have fun?" And I
Mm-hmm.
was honored. I was like completely honored to finally be able to ask that question. But I was like, I was afraid. I'm like, oh fuck, I hope this wasn't boring. But you guys have fun, and I got a pretty good response, and that made me really happy.
Right,
Like that's
and
what I want, that response every time.
guys, guys think it's kind of trivial that we ask, did you have fun? Because everybody's always gonna fucking say yes. It's the entire fucking task force isn't gonna go, no, it fucking sucked, because they're being respectful. Um, which is fine. Whatever. It is what it is. Of course, everybody's gonna say yes, I had fun. Um, especially with like when it's like me or Drum or somebody asking, yeah, of course they're gonna say they had fun. But like I told you guys when we sat down and had a big meeting with all the Ares operators, and I told everyone like, look, this is a fucking thankless job. Like you're not gonna have somebody beating down your fucking office door saying, "Hey, that was the most amazing mission I've ever played in my entire fucking ArmA career," and oh my god, let me suck your dick. Like it's not gonna happen. But
Oh, that'd be great.
on that rare occasion where you Zeus an operation and you think, man, that fucking sucked. I screwed this up. I screwed this up. I messed this up. And a random fucking E4 messages you on TeamSpeak and says, that was the best mission I've ever been in. Thank you. That's like one of the greatest feelings ever as an Aries. Or like, especially when the more senior guys message you and say, hey, that was a fucking amazing mission. I had so much fun. That's a great feeling. Like oftentimes I'll get a message a day or two later because for a long time I was only Zeusing for Bravo, which is Havoc 2. Their platoon leader is Lieutenant Williams, who I've known Williams for years now. Quite often I would get a message 2, maybe 3 days later from Williams like, hey, that mission was fucking outstanding. Just got done watching your video, this and that. You're an asshole for doing this. He's like that fucking murder hole with that Mark 19. Like that's a really nice feeling, and that's about as good as it gets as Aries, because otherwise it's just people bitching at you like your frame sucked or this or that. But on
Yeah.
that rare occasion where you get a fucking random PFC or something that's like, hey man, that fucking mission was awesome and this and that, and I want to be a Zeus operator one day, and it's like, well, you probably never will, but that's good for you. It feels cool.
Like being an astronaut.
Yeah. And that's not necessarily to be a dick. It's just, again, with all the responsibility and stuff, it's like, dude, I have to be incredibly fucking selective when it comes to who I choose to be a Zeus operator. And it's not just a matter of, oh, I have this much experience Zeusing. Honestly,
Right.
if someone has the right mindset that I'm looking for, and it's somebody that I believe is fucking dependable and will take the job seriously, I don't care if they've never Zeused a single fucking mission the entire time they've played ArmA. I can teach anybody to run fucking Zeus. It's not about having the experience and knowing what the modules do. It's about having the right fucking mindset.
Here comes the
And
GMG.
yeah, I just seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about having the right mindset and being able to think about things logically and in a realistic manner. Not, hey, this looks cool, or this would be funny, or I would have fun, doing this to guys because I think it's funny. Like that's the number one thing that guys have to understand is it doesn't mean dick about how much fun you have.
Yep, it's not about you.
Yeah, I don't give a shit if it is the worst fucking 3 hours of your entire ArmA career. If that task force had a great time, it was worth it. That simple.
Which is why, I'm surprised. I didn't expect, to get, you put the announcement out and like, go ahead, go apply to me. I'm like, I'd like to do that, because I'm in reserve, so it's not like I have any other responsibilities to handle. So sure, I'd like to try. I didn't think you were even gonna pick me, but I was like, well, I'll put my name in the hat, and yeah, I couldn't be happier, like, that I actually had this opportunity to, like, I don't know, to have the potential of make an event that someone was waiting 2 weeks for and potentially make it one of the best nights of their lives. Like, that
Right.
makes me happier than any amount of any other. I don't give a fuck how many missions I've done. That's what, like, makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah, and that's, like when I put the thing up for the S3 position openings, like I got like 15 messages in 24 hours. And it's like, Jesus fuck, man. Bastards need to calm down a little bit, all right? I'm not hiring that many of you. Fucking Christ. So I don't want to fucking spend all night on this because there is some other stuff I want to talk about a little bit. But
All right.
as a whole for this FTX, what was kind of your, I guess, kind of your overall thoughts on it? Was it, did you enjoy it from an Aries perspective? And I don't mean, dealing with the fucking retarded AI and stuff like that. More so, getting to watch a task force actually work and stuff like that. And, being responsible for these guys having a good time. Did you enjoy it, or did you find it more stressful than you were expecting, or what?
Oh, it was definitely more stressful than I was expecting, but I don't look at that as a bad thing. I'm okay with dealing with stress. As a father, as ex-husband and a current husband, stress ain't shit. Like, it's whatever. I can get fucking freaked out about things, but I can always persevere and get through it. It's fine. So stress for me is like, for me, the stress is, okay, don't be stupid, don't make any mistakes, or don't make any like catastrophic mistakes, and
Don't
you'll
piss
do
off the
well.
first sergeant.
Don't pick up, don't piss off, don't disappoint Brewer.
Yeah.
Because but yeah, and like, just quickly get out of the way, just because you mentioned it before, like watching a task force, not to take anything away from like aviation or Havoc 4, because I was looking around, like, you had the two mortar pits there, we had shit that was in the back that was ready to go and start fucking with the task force, but I would turn my head and I'd look back, and like the mortar pits just destroyed. I'm like, who the fuck did that? Did
Yeah.
Havoc 4 do that? Like, it's so, there's so many moving parts here that there's shit happening that I'm not
Yeah,
even aware of.
you can't possibly keep your eyes on everything because obviously the ground element is the biggest fucking thing there. So you have to pay close attention to what they're doing, where they're moving, so on and so forth. So when Havoc 4, who's in the middle of that massive fucking blob, stops, sets up their tube, and sends out a fucking 6-round fire mission, you probably have no idea that it even happened unless you hear it being called out on CompanyNet. If air assets do a fucking gun run with the A-10, you might know about it because you might hear the gun go off, but if they're firing Mavericks, you probably don't even know about it unless you're looking at the vehicle or whatever that gets hit. If the Apache's attacking something, 90% of the time, you're going to have no fucking idea the Apache even did anything. Unless, again, you're sitting there looking at the vehicle or whatever that Hellfire's hitting, or you happen to hear the cannon impacts, which a lot of times with the Apache, people mistake the Apache's cannon impacts for a fucking autocannon from like a BMP-2 or a BTR-80A or, a ZU or something like that. Oftentimes people think it's a fucking autocannon firing from an enemy vehicle and they don't realize, like, no, that's fucking impacts from Warlord 2 clicks out there and you can't even fucking see them. And they're shooting fools with fucking 30 millimeter. But yeah, that happens a lot. Like, even for me, shit gets killed, and I'll go to fucking remote control a mortar guy to send out a fire mission, and they're sitting there dead, and I'm like, what the fuck happened to them? Shit, now I can't play with any mortars.
Yep.
Assholes. But yeah, you'll catch yourself quite often cursing, especially supporting assets like mortars and aviation. you'll catch yourself cursing them quite a bit. Like, you fucking cocksuckers. Especially the A-10. Like, when they come in and do a fucking gun run on a platoon of infantry that you just spawned to flank them, and the A-10 just comes in and mops them up in a matter of, like, 3 seconds. You fucking assholes.
God damn it, Soto.
Exactly. So, yeah. So, overall, you had a good time with it, though?
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to do it again, honestly.
Well,
I got ideas and ways to
and
improve.
that's gotta hurt.
Yeah, yes, it hurts very much for like there's someone banging a hammer around inside my skull.
What? You were banging hammer? I give you one night without me supervising. You start banging hammer.
It's
Jesus
that
Christ.
Minnesota accent. I can't help it.
That's what it's all about, you know.
Oh yeah.
So I wanted to kind of move on from this. Like I said, there were some other things I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit tonight. And one of those is something that been able to talk about a little bit, not necessarily at length, but been able to talk a little bit with Nichols. For those who are not aware, aside from playing ArmA and hanging out with a bunch of dudes, Nichols has another hobby, and where she hangs out with a bunch of dudes, assumedly.
Yes.
Okay. So what is it that you go out there or do out there in the great communist state of California?
Besides continue to look more like communists ever, yeah, no.
Yeah.
She's a bukkake film producer.
Yeah.
Screw you. No.
You weren't supposed to talk about that part, damn it.
Yeah, god damn it, no.
That's the next stream. That's the sponsor.
Yeah, shh. Anyway, no, what Top is kind of putting a hint to is I go about up in mainly Oregon, not California, is World War II reenacting as a Soviet soldier, due to the fact of back in the day, women were quite prevalent in the Soviet army.
Quite fucking badass.
Yeah, that too.
So, and this is something that honestly surprises me. We've had a few people in and out of the unit that have done reenactments and stuff like that. The reason that it surprised me, though, obviously, you're fucking female, but it's not as big of a surprise considering you're doing this, so it's not that big of a deal. But it's generally rare among younger people to do reenactments. Like, it's not nearly as common as what it is with people, I'd say, my age and over, 40 and older. So, what the fuck got you into doing reenactments?
Well, also the younger generation tend to go more towards the public ones, which are like the Civil War, because that's the ones, especially here in California, that are open to the public. So more general than not.
Well, plus you get to shoot gigantic brass cannons, which is pretty fucking
that too, plus
cool.
ride horses or stand in a big long line of other guys and shoot black powder muskets. It's great fun. But most of the younger around my age, mid to late 20s, maybe even younger depending, tend to go for the Civil War stuff because it's more of a known thing. The World War II stuff here especially are not open to the public. And one can argue, well, why not? And give all these reasons of why not open it to the public. But in the long run of things, it's more of the sense of, well, World War II is still kind of a salty subject for a lot of people, especially with the Nazis and all. So you never really can tell who's gonna get, butthurt
who's
gonna
get all fucking pissy because somebody's walking around in a fucking SS uniform and they're like, hey, fucking...
Or in my case, the same thing with the Soviets, the whole Cold War era thing, the McCarthyism. You never really can tell who might all of a sudden, either go PC on you and just all of a sudden be...
I could totally see my fucking...
nuts.
I could totally see my 65-year-old father out there like, the fucking commies finally did it.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not as well open to the public. But what really got me into it is my family heritage with the war. My grandfather served in World War II. He was a translator for the Third Army under General Patton, speaking German. I mean, he immigrated to this country from Russia back in 1918, speaking only German. So to me, that's a big part of my life, is growing up, meeting that man, knowing what he did and all that stuff. That means a lot to me. But what really got me into it is my love of history and my love of, making sure people understand what happened, how things happened, why things happened, and not to make that same mistake again. Because you can see it countless number of times in history that the same mistake with people are made over and over and over again.
Right.
Like Russia in the winter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Never
Another
going to
thing
Russia in the winter.
Yeah. Another thing is to honor those that fought during there and lost their lives on all sides.
Right.
It's not necessarily just honoring the Allies because they won. I'm
Right.
doing it to
That's-
honor the Soviet soldiers who died. No, I'm honoring every single person who fought and died in that war, whether they be SS, NKVD, the Allgemeine regiments that were the really, 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 really bad guys from the German military. All those guys, doesn't matter who it was, what they did. I might not necessarily agree with what they did or think they're good people. They still deserve to have that honor of being recognized, that these guys took the ultimate step of either fighting for their country and or dying for their country.
Right, and that's something that, especially, obviously with the Nazis, they were the bad guys, they were the incarnation of evil and this and that. A lot of people overlook the fact that, just because you were in the Nazi army didn't mean you agreed with fucking cooking Jews or putting them in gas chambers or shit
Exactly.
like that. You didn't have to share the beliefs of, the fucking ridiculously insane to be in the military.
Yeah,
it wasn't a
the thing-
requirement.
Yeah, the thing. Well, I mean, it was, but it wasn't.
Well, it
It's
was
one
for
of these
some
things.
units.
It was one of those things where people don't necessarily understand that the German Heer, HEER, as a whole, which is the regular army, wasn't a political arm. The SS, political arm. They were militarized political personnel. So the Waffen SS, yes, they were members of the party. That's how it was. The Heer, a lot of them
Yeah,
knew
the
exactly what was going. Everybody knew exactly what was going on. Some maybe didn't necessarily agree with it or whatever, but it was that fear, like, yeah, Sal, like what you say, Sal. Yeah, it was a fear of what would happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're under this totalitarian regime that has complete power.
Mhm.
You say a bad thing, it's just like Stalin and his purges with the NKVD. You say one bad thing about Stalin, bam, you're shot, executed, done, end of story.
Yeah, and it's actually
it's just,
it's kind of funny though that your like your grandfather kind of tied you to it, who
Yeah.
like you said, was in third and went in and was a translator. And for those of you guys that don't know, or sorry, Third Army, for those of you guys that don't know, Third Army was who came in and basically relieved the 101st in Bastogne.
Yes.
Once Patton was able to break through, that's what saved the 101st from being overrun. For those of you guys that don't know, and we're actually going to go over this in a little bit more detail later, my grandfather, who was also born in 1918, was a paratrooper in Dog Company 506 and was in Bastogne and injured in Bastogne. So Nichols' grandfather, who was born the same fucking year.
No, he wasn't born. He immigrated
Or sorry,
to the U.S. in
immigrated.
1918.
Okay.
He was born in, I believe, 1912.
Okay, so he came in and basically was one of the troops that came in and fucking backed up my grandfather's regiment, who got beat the fuck up. So it's kind of crazy how small of a world it is, even though
It is.
on that scale it's not, because when you think in terms of the amount of forces that fought in World War II, of course there's going to be, some ties here and there, but in terms of the amount of forces that fought in Bastogne at the Battle of the Bulge, it's pretty fucking rare considering the millions of troops that fought in World War II. To have that kind of close of a tie here, what is it, 70 years later or whatever,
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's mainly just to honor everyone who served. I mean, mainly my grandfather because he meant a lot to me. And honestly, me and my brother, who also would do this with me, although he is now active Army, um, our grandfather meant a lot to us. And we were the only ones in the family that he'd ever talked to anything in length about the war. Like he wouldn't talk to his own kids, wouldn't talk to anybody about it, but he would talk to us because he knew no matter what he said, whether it comes off as him being a monster executing prisoners, which I'm sure he never did, but he could have said that, and that that could have happened, but our vision on idea of him would never change.
Mm-hmm.
He was our grandfather. We would have loved him no matter what, and would have been proud of him no matter what, and I think he knew that, which allowed him to talk to us about the war more in depth than it would about his own kids, my father's sister, and my father's brother.
And so, in terms of the reenactment, how, I guess, what's the term I'm looking for here? Like
How is it organized?
No, more so like how, fuck. Like, do you go like full on? You're out there in a fucking canvas pup tent, no
Sometimes.
electronics or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Sometimes. At our spot here in California that we would do, but it's currently under a legal situation. Yeah, we would be out there in tents. There's some things that we would, fudge on, like for cooking. We'd
Right.
use like
Yeah, just
gas
basic
camping
amenities.
cook
Yeah.
stoves, but for the most part, no radios, no cell phones, no nothing. It's all campfire, canvas tents, all that stuff. The one up in Oregon, we get a little bit more leeway. We get barracks because we're on a actual National Guard base
Oh,
doing
okay.
it. So we get barracks again. So we have electricity, and there's some things that we kind of have to cover up, like vending machines and whatnot, because
Right.
it's like, But out in the field, it's 100% 1940s. We do not have radios. We do not have, even if we do have radios, it's normally one guy has a radio and he's in contact with one other guy.
Right.
For us as the Russians, there is no radio. We have, there's at least 4 or 5 different units that go up there as Russians. We have guards units, we have partisan units, we have regular infantry units, and I think we even have a mixed unit that has naval infantry in there too as well. But
so how do you guys handle the logistics in terms of like munitions and shit? Like, in terms of like the blanks, are you guys firing blanks? Is it
it's
like
blanks.
a fucking so?
No, it's blanks.
How do you guys get the blanks? Like, are you guys responsible for getting the blanks yourselves, or is there like a
Yes.
master armorer there that fucking brings everything?
Everything we do is on our own dime.
Okay.
So all the blanks I get, I can. Most of the time, I don't buy my own blanks. I buy them from the unit because a lot of people buy bulk purchases of
Right,
blanks.
and then you just buy them
So
from them.
I
Yeah.
just am like, okay, I need this amount of blanks. Here's $20 or whatever.
Right.
Or whatever they say they want to sell me some blanks for. So there is some sense of camaraderie where we help each other out, but for the most part, everything is on our own dime.
Right. Okay. So that makes sense then. Because I've always been curious about that in terms of, especially, for black powder, it's a little bit different. It's just, all right, go get some fucking PX and you're good to go.
Yeah, get some paper and some black powder
yeah.
and you're good.
But for, especially stuff like that where you're actually using cartridges and stuff, I always kind of wondered, like, who in the fuck takes care of getting the actual ammunition? Like, does everybody have to buy their own ammo? Or, is there, like, fucking, is there
Yeah.
Billy over in the corner that is like, hey, man, I got $5, give me a couple of rounds.
Nah, and well, I mean, some do that. Some will use their expended ammo, like the casings, because
Mhm.
I mean, in the sense of things, a blank is just the shell casing. There is no bullet on the top, and they just crimp the
Yeah.
top of it to give it that sound. So a lot of people continue to, take those spent
Yeah, you just
casings
reuse your
and just
casings.
reuse them, and they'll refill them, they'll re-crimp them and all that stuff, and they'll just repackage their own ammo. People will do that.
Yeah.
The only regulation in terms of the blanks is if you're buying them, you have to buy them from reputable distributors to the units, because everybody has where they know they make good blanks and aren't,
Right. Yeah,
something to
somebody's not
where.
going to get fucking hurt, or,
Yeah,
it's not going to be a fucking
yeah.
Brandon
And
Lee
there's
situation.
Brandon Lee, yeah.
yeah, there's also always a safety check before we go out in the field
Right.
where you have somebody else, like I package my own ammo. So like I don't recreate my own ammo. Like I buy them from somebody else, but I put in all that ammo myself into my stripper clips. Now, I know they're blanks. The person I bought them knows they're blanks. Nobody else necessarily knows they're a blank. So somebody else besides him and besides me has to come by,
Mhm.
look at it and inspect it to make sure, hey, this thing is not a blank. You're going to kill somebody with this, or,
Right.
whatever. So you always have somebody from another unit come by and check your ammo.
Yeah, it's not going to
Is
be
that
like the fucking episode of Psych where fucking dude gets shot at the Civil War reenactment, which is still one of the greatest episodes ever of one
Yeah,
of the greatest shows ever.
has that happened?
exactly.
Like some sociopath brings a
No.
fucking live round?
It's not necessarily
I
a
don't know.
sociopath brings a live round. It's more one just accidentally gets overlooked.
Yeah.
Or somebody didn't clear their rifle beforehand and forgot
Yeah,
that
like
they
they were
had
out
they
actually
went.
shooting
Yeah,
and
they did a live shoot and they forgot that they didn't expend all the rounds and didn't actually clear it. Yeah, it can happen. It has happened.
well,
It
I remember
there's
with that episode of and Lost where the fucking module goes on the red circle, not the red diamond, jackass. But
Thank
I remember specifically that episode of Psych because of that reason, that I always remember thinking like, man, that'd be a hell of a way to try and get away with murder, is to fucking smoke somebody at a fucking war reenactment. Because,
it's a
you've got
lot
hundreds
harder.
of people firing at once.
Yeah. It's not so much as you'd get away with it because it's what TV kind of doesn't do is they don't show stuff behind the scenes with that stuff. So it's a lot harder than a lot of people think for it to be actual get away with. Because there's always safety precautions
Right.
involved. Even with the Civil War stuff, you have people come by and check your cartridges of the black powder to make sure you didn't put something in there.
Right.
That is just strictly paper and powder. That's it.
Right, yeah.
So there are tons of safeguards. Um, a lot of our accidents as reenactors tend to happen either on sets with movies or filming or something of that sort. Just like this one's still kind of fresh in everyone's mind, especially for the groups up in Oregon, but not not the one that happened just this last December, but the one that happened before that. A lot of our two of our friends were in a Hellcat, an M18 Hellcat,
Mm-hmm.
filming something. I think it was in Montana or something like that. And they died because either like the breach wasn't clear fully or something like that. But there was when the round went off to simulate it firing,
Oh, there was an
it
interior detonation.
there was an interior detonation and they died.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people up from the Oregon units actually knew them and reenacted with them, and it was a terrible, terrible tragedy. I unfortunately never got to meet them, so I was a little less affected. But nonetheless, it was a terrible tragedy on the ends of, things like this happen, and w- we can't we can't ever continue to not do our safety protocols. That's why there's a lot of medical employees, EMTs,
Right, always
doctors,
on
all that
hand
stuff.
and
Yeah, well, not even on hand, that are actually out there doing it. Uh,
well, that
we
and
have
fucking
former
doctors got the money for it.
that too. We have police officers, we have military personnel out there, we have, fire
Right.
people
People
from
with
the fire
actual fucking
departments.
field
You know,
training and shit.
Exactly. There's always people out there that, and always beforehand, they always are asking, how many people know first aid? And then whoever knows first aid raises their hands. There's always that there. And then there's always, the one thing where if somebody yells real world, all immersion stops immediately. Everything in terms of 1940s immersion stops immediately, and we have to treat that real world injury,
Right.
because that now becomes a precedent over, what the hell has happened. Did somebody break their leg just walking around, or is somebody fucking shot? So when
Right.
you hear somebody yell real world, everything just gets instant
It's like
pause
saying
button.
timeout.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's instant pause button, timeout, whatever you want to call it. And it is, everybody rushes over there to basically wonder what the hell is going on, try and make sure, it's
See,
not
and
something serious where somebody's dead.
with stuff like that, like I'm actually going to be talking to my cousin this weekend because uh, my cousin, one of my, or actually no, it'd be my niece. Sorry, my niece's wedding is this weekend, so I'm going to see my cousin. And I've talked about him before. My cousin is a member of one of the militias here in Michigan, and I've often wondered why, like, a lot of the guys that do the militia shit don't just do reenactment, because that's really what they're there for. Like
Pretty
they
much.
don't give a shit about protecting our constitutional rights or protecting us from a tyranny of government and this and that because they couldn't protect themselves from a fucking fly in a wet paper bag. It's like, dude, you're 40, you're about 200 pounds overweight, and you're not fighting off shit. So fuck off. Your fucking tactical knowledge consists of watching Ken Burns documentaries. Shut the fuck up. Uh, so I'm gonna have to ask him this weekend, like, why in the fuck don't those guys just do like some fucking reenactments or something? Like, please, for the love of all that is holy, stop having those fucking douchebags try and hide behind some false fucking patriotism because that's not
Yeah.
what it is.
Uh, I think to answer that question to a degree is especially for the World War II side of things. I mean, for Civil War stuff, it's a little more lax. There's can't really have somebody who may be pro-Confederate in there and people care.
Right.
Somebody's pro-Confederacy, which means they're actually, in the sense of the Civil War, was they're pro-state rights, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody's gonna really give a shit about that. Whereas for the World War II thing, you get a militia guy who is, super gung-ho and kind of fascinated by the Germans.
Yeah,
That
neo-Nazism is
becomes,
still looked down upon.
yes, that is an entirely different bag of cats. And there's, the minute anybody tends to find out about neo-Nazism, or that you really are into what the Nazis did or whatever, you're instantly kicked out of the groups.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that we joke about.
Right. Well, I
We mu-
remember, it wasn't that long ago. I think it was last year, maybe, or maybe the year before last, that those guys got arrested in Germany and actually were sentenced to time in Germany for fucking like tagging Swazis all over the place and stuff. They were tourists. They weren't German nationalists.
Mhm.
And they got sentenced to fucking prison time for fucking, spraying a bunch of Nazi propaganda around and shit. And people were all up in arms about it. And it's like, dude, like that shit is no fucking joke in Germany. Like, they do not fuck around, dude.
It's physically illegal for any of that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
they cannot, if they were to do World War II reenacting, they have to basically dumb down the uniform to where it has no form of swastika, Reich Eagle, or
Mm-hmm.
any of that stuff on the uniform itself. It is not a laughing matter there. They take that stuff very seriously.
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, I remember Amazon taking a bunch of shit when they started that Man on the High Castle or Man in the High Castle series. Because it
Yeah.
was based on, the Nazis and the Japanese winning World War II and this and that. So, of course,
Yeah.
it had a shit ton of Nazi symbolism and so on. And they took a bunch of shit for that, especially in Germany.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's like,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
you guys have lost your fucking minds if you think we're going to let you hang posters up that's got the fucking eagle on there and a fucking swastika. Like, no, you're out of your mind.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, look at any World War II game made. I mean, just like what Eagle said there, Hearts of Iron 4, you cannot show that stuff in Germany.
Mm,
It's physically illegal. Like, that's why you see like Call of Duty World War II. Most of it you don't see the swastika around anymore.
and
It's not there.
I remember this was quite a few years ago now. My nephew was like, I don't know, 17 or 18 maybe. And I remember walking into his fucking room one day. I think I was taking him to school or something. I went in there to get him and I caught him fucking drawing a swazi on his desk. And because of, I guess, friends and family acquaintances and stuff like that, like that's kind of a circle that my family has always been around, not in terms of like Nazis or shit like that, but just kind of
Hmm.
like the biker, area and, being around clubs and tattoo parlors and shit like that. It's the kind of company that's kept in areas like that. So it wasn't exactly, uh, something that he would have never seen before, or
Right.
it's, you know, my family's very familiar with seeing swastikas and,
Yes.
88s and shit like that. Um, but I walked in and he's like fucking drawing the swazi on his desk with an ink pen. And I slapped him in the back of the head so fucking hard that I thought I broke my hand. Um, and he got all pissed and didn't understand why. And I was like, kid, do you even fucking realize what your fucking grandfather went through
Yeah.
to fucking stop stupid shit like that? And here
Yeah. I
you
mean,
are with no idea what the fuck that even represents. You've seen it
yeah.
on guys' fucking vests or, on some dude's fucking air cleaner on his motorcycle, so you think it's cool. You don't even know what the fuck that symbol means, kid.
Yeah, exactly. Like as a homework assignment in high school, I had to, write what that symbol meant to me. So, I drew a picture of it on the piece of paper I was going to write it, and I got sent up to the vice principal's office and my biology class for doing it because we had a little part between our first break and the end of biology to where we could do homework for other classes. And my teacher sent me up to the vice principal for that. I'm like, no, no, this is homework. You can even ask my
Right.
history teacher. It's not a joke. It really isn't. I mean, that's why the World War II stuff is really, really closed door
Hmm.
because it is not a joke. You know,
And that's why it's,
there's just not.
especially not so much now because, the vast majority of the people that recognize that symbolism, obviously, history buffs or, people in, say, Europe, but especially here, things like the Iron Cross or the Maltese Cross, any symbol that the Nazis bastardized for their own usage,
Yeah,
people see them now and they think, oh, that's cool. That's just a cool symbol. They don't realize
yeah,
what it means to a lot of people
yeah,
that
exactly.
recognize what it was used for, not necessarily what it was originally used for. Even it's very, I guess, not commonly known, but for history people, it's very commonly known that the swastika isn't originally a Nazi symbol. It's a
No,
bastardized Egyptian symbol that they slanted a
Indian
little bit. Or yes, sorry, um, that they slanted a little bit at a fucking 45, and they're like, "This is our new symbol." Same
and
with
reversed it too. I
yeah,
believe they
um,
inverted it and slanted it because
and
the
same
original
with
symbol itself is supposed to be a symbol of peace.
yeah. Um, well, then it was looked at as it was also theorized that it's 4 L's and it means love and this, and there's been all kinds of fucking theories.
Yeah.
But, the same again with the Iron Cross and, this and that. But again, people now adopt that shit as, hey, it looks cool, because especially now there's not as many living people that recognize what that symbol was turned into. And
Exactly.
that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's kind of a good thing in a sense that, people are moving away from that and, can look at, people can now, like, say someone now that's like 16, can look at an Iron Cross and not think of it as a Nazi symbol.
Right.
Maybe,
They might be able
maybe,
to go back. They might be able to go back to what it originally was for, like, bravery and
right, a
whatnot.
symbol of fucking power. Um, Again, maybe, they're still going to learn
Yeah.
about it in history class, but it's
Oh, of
not
course.
as fresh of a wound.
Right.
But that kind of gets me into, I guess, kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about tonight. As the title states, a very Wargames history, as we're talking about history and stuff. So, what I wanted to kind of go over, I guess, is to kind of fill you guys in on a little bit of background, since I'm feeling nostalgic with everything that's been going on over the last week or so. So I wanted to give you guys kind of a little peek into why I have found myself here, doing shit like this. Role playing in a realism ArmA unit and training guys and this and that. Like, how in the fuck did I end up doing stuff like this? So to really kind of understand that, obviously you have to go back to where I guess the influence would have really started. And technically, the influence would have started before I was even actually born. So to go back as far as I can in terms of my personal knowledge. My dad has a little bit more knowledge on it, not just because he's an old motherfucker, but because he's the one that did the research into my family's lineage. My logo that you guys see all over the place, that's my family crest that my dad was able to find. So he's got a little bit more knowledge on it. The farthest back that I know of in terms of kind of my family history, my mother's side, I don't really know too much on, aside from that my grandfather on my mom's side was in World War II. He was in the Navy on either a cruiser or a destroyer. I can't remember. He very briefly told me about it before, but I never really talked to my mom's father very much at all. He lived down in North Carolina. We seen him once a summer, maybe. So I didn't really get to talk to him all that much about that stuff. And, at that time, I was super young. I didn't really understand any of it. But on my dad's side, I know a lot more about my dad's side of things. So to kind of go back to my grandmother on my dad's side, this is where my family history gets real fucking interesting real quick. Okay. So my grandparents grew up in Hazard County, Kentucky, which is the most redneck fucking area you can pretty much think of. I mean, they pretty much invented the term redneck in that area. Well, they didn't. They invented it in Ireland, but So my
Them Duke
grandmother,
boys.
what's that?
Them Duke boys in Hazard County.
Yeah, well, that was Hazard County, Georgia, but yeah.
Yeah.
So my grandmother did not grow up with her paternal parents. She grew up with her grandparents. Reason being, her mother died in childbirth with her younger brother. Her father, my great grandfather, was the sheriff of Hazard County. Now, I've seen actual newspaper clippings of him and some of the news stories about him and stuff, and he was touted as being one of the last gunfighters. There's a great fucking picture of him that my grandmother had of him posing for a photo with his .45 in his holster, carrying his fucking lever action Henry rifle. And he was famous for going everywhere with that Colt 45 on his hip and a Henry lever action 30-30. However, he was killed when my grandmother was 4 years old in a gunfight in a bar. They actually, I guess, lured him into the bar by saying there was so-and-so that was wanted in the bar, and they knew he would be coming in there looking for a fight. So when he came in and seen the guy and went to draw down on him, there was actually 8 or 9 armed guys there waiting for him. And they ambushed him and shot and killed him. And there's a big, huge news story, news story from the local newspaper that I've read that my grandmother has like a copy of, or had a copy of. It was really fucking cool. I mean, it was just interesting to see that kind of family history that, you know, he was kind of up there in his age. He was, I think, 50 the time he was killed. So he was quite a bit older when he had my grandmother and her younger brother. And he was, like I said, the last of the gunfighters is what they called him in the news story. So she went to grow up with her grandparents. Now, my grandfather, the man that she would later marry, grew up dirt poor with, I think it was like 6 siblings or something like that. And when he was 15, his father was killed in a collapse in a mine shaft. He worked for the coal mines. My grandfather was in the team that went to work digging out the mine shaft. He dug out the mine shaft that held his father's body at 15 years old, which is already like how the fuck do you do that at 15 years old? How the fuck do you go a couple hundred feet down into the earth to dig out your father's body? The more amazing part is that as he was the eldest of 6 at 15, he went to work for the exact same coal mine and started going down hundreds of feet into the earth. Holy shit, there's the Olympic rings in the bottom right corner. I just noticed that. Sorry, guys, but the little red circles in the bottom right corner made the Olympic rings.
Oh my God.
So at 15, he goes to work for the same coal mine that his father just died for. He turns 19. World War II breaks out. And he had a choice of either stay working in the coal mines or go in the Army. Army paid more money. Well, he had some medical issues and was 4F'd a couple of times for basically his back and shit being bad from working in the coal mine for 4 or 5 years already. But eventually they approved him and he got through. Well, much like the story you hear about in Band of Brothers when they talk about the extra $50 a month or whatever it was, my grandfather volunteered for Airborne because it was more money. And even though he wasn't a father, he had a family to take care of back home. So he volunteered for Airborne. Now, before he shipped out for training, he was actually dating my grandmother's older sister. Weird. But they broke up, I guess, right before he shipped out, and my grandmother had a crush on him the whole time. And after they broke up, she told her sister, one day I'm going to marry that man. So my grandfather ships off, goes through training. He is part of the replacements, as they call them in Band of Brothers, that comes in after Market Garden. So after the 506 jumps into Holland, they took huge losses. Gigantic wave of reinforcements comes in. My grandfather was one of those. He joked to me one time that he was an airborne trooper and never once made a jump out of an airplane except for in training. He rowed a boat over to mainland, fought in Bastogne, well, up into Bastogne, where in Bastogne he was shot twice. After he was shot, He fell, and when he fell, it actually broke his back and paralyzed him from the legs down. Luckily for him, temporarily. And he had to crawl into a foxhole and survive the artillery at that point. He was the only guy in his rifle squad that survived the artillery. So
Damn.
he told me up until that point, he wasn't necessarily a very religious guy. Even though being in Kentucky, you know, of course they went to church every Sunday and this and that, but, you know, he smoked, he drank, he even had a tattoo, which, you know, people that would have met my grandfather would be like fucking blown away to hear that that guy had a tattoo. But it was very simple. It just said U.S. Army across his forearm. But he wasn't a super religious person. And he told me that after he was shot and he crawled into that foxhole, he said that he made a deal with God that if he got to go home, he would devote his life to God. So he got to go home. That he was the only guy that survived. He was awarded the Purple Heart as well as the Bronze Star because while he was in that foxhole after the artillery strike, they had Germans wander inside their lines, and he ended up going hand to hand with one of the German troopers with his fucking shovel, and he made it, and the other guy didn't. And the only reason I know about that is because for my grandfather's 85th birthday, we had all of his medals reissued to him. And part of reissuing those medals is you get to see the original write-ups. They come with the write-ups for the medals, for what they were awarded for, and so on. He never told us about that, but he never didn't talk about any of that shit. Not because it was like, you know, he was shell-shocked or had... well, shell shock's what they called it back then. Now we recognize it as PTSD and this and that. It was just he didn't see himself as some big war hero or anything like that, and he didn't want to glorify it in any way because he was fucking terrified that one of us would want to go to the military because his sons went to. So, anyways, he, of course, you know, got to come home, and he got home. And my grandmother was still there. They started dating, got married. Both of them became ordained Pentecostal preachers. Which, for anyone that doesn't know, the Pentecostal faith is what you would consider fucking hardcore. Those are the ones that you see, like, in the movies, the crazy motherfuckers that stand up on the backs of the church pews and speak in tongues and dance with snakes and shit. That's Pentecost.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
They're rowdy. To the point, like, you know, when they're...
It's like a mosh pit in there.
Yeah. They were so devout, like, of course, my grandparents didn't cuss. My grandmother had, up until the day she died a few years ago, she had never worn anything but a dress. Never. Never a pair of pants, slacks, nothing like that. She wore dresses every single day because that was what was expected. But they were both ordained. They owned multiple churches throughout my fucking childhood and so on. We would, you know, go to church with them on Easter Sunday to make our fucking appearance. But he came home, they got married, became Pentecostal, but he still had to make a living because now he had kids on the way. Because it was the 1940s and they just got done with fucking war. What do you think everybody's doing? They're fucking. So he still had to make money. But even then, in rural fucking Kentucky, there isn't exactly a lot of ways to make money. One of the biggest ways to make money at that time was shine. Moonshine. Well, my grandfather and my great uncle went to work. They started stilling shine and running shine up here to Michigan. So they would run moonshine from Kentucky up to Michigan. Now, granted, this wasn't during Prohibition, right? This is during the 40s, not the fucking 30s. But moonshine was still sought after because it's so powerful. It has such a high alcohol content. There's a reason moonshine is still illegal to produce yourselves. It's not regulated, this and that. So moonshine was still sought after, even in the 40s. So they started running shine. Of course, what comes running with shine? Law, this and that, dealing with cars, everything that you guys have, heard about and seen in movies, souping up cars and this and that. Again, insanely fucking interesting life that these guys led. So, despite the fact that my grandfather, was an ordained Pentecostal preacher, here he was running moonshine, running from fucking police, and so on and so forth, because he had to make a living. He had to feed his family. So, eventually, in 1946, I think it was, is when NASCAR was formed. Around that time, anyways, is when, all the circle track racing started and this and that. And NASCAR, I'm pretty sure it started in 46. So guys like that, guys running moonshine and stuff like that, people that had reputations, they started, getting phone calls saying, hey, you want to go to work, do this, so on. And my uncle, my great uncle, was one of the lucky guys that got one of those phone calls. He ended up going to work for the Allison family, which anybody that follows racing, NASCAR, you've heard of the Allison family. They're one of the big fucking dynasties. So my uncle went to work for the Allisons as one of their mechanics. My grandfather was also offered a job as a mechanic for the Allisons. Well, throughout their time running shine back and forth from Kentucky up here to Michigan, my grandfather was introduced to GM. And so he then had a choice to make. Am I going to go to work for these other guys in North Carolina and, this NASCAR thing, this race and stuff may or may not work out. We may make money this week and not make money next week. Or can I uproot my family and move from Kentucky up to Michigan and go to work for this car company that seems to be doing pretty damn good? He chose the latter. So he moved up here to Michigan and went to work for GM and put in 46 years at GM. Now, this is why I admire that man so goddamn much. This is a guy who, again, at 15, dug his father's body out of a fucking coal mine and then turned around and went to work in the exact same coal mine. At 19, had 5 siblings to take care of and enlisted in the army, volunteered to go airborne, and went to fucking Germany. Shot, wounded, fought in what many would argue the worst fucking battle of the entire conflict, and made it home. And then started running moonshine, which at that time many would consider one of the most dangerous fucking jobs you could have possibly been doing in the US. And then turns down a job for NASCAR, even though it didn't know it was NASCAR at the time, and goes to work for GM, the largest fucking motor company on the planet, and puts in almost 50 years with them before he finally retires. Dude was the definition of a badass. And you would never assume it looking at him. I mean, especially when he started getting older. You could tell back in the day he was a bigger guy. My grandfather was like 6'3", maybe 6'4". But you would have never assumed that guy led the life that he did. It just did not look like it. Especially considering he's a guy that fucking went to church every Sunday. You wouldn't have thought that guy beat somebody to death with a shovel 50 years before that. Never would have thought it. So, again, my grandparents moved up here, started fucking raising their family. My family is kind of known for having, I guess, big litters, if you will. Everybody ends up having anywhere from 3 to 6 kids, pretty much. So my grandparents had 5 kids. So there was my 2 uncles who are older than my father, and my father who's in the middle, and then his 2 younger sisters. So my oldest uncle ended up going to work for GM, kind of followed my grandfather's footsteps. And the way that persistent motherfucker got a job for GM, and now, and I've talked about this before, you guys have to understand that back then, to work for GM through, you know, the 50s, 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, working for GM was fucking gold. If you worked for GM, that meant you were set for life. Because at that time, especially in the 50s, 60s, 70s, Michigan was either the highest or one of the highest throughout all those years, highest median income per household. We're talking in the 60s, people were making $50,000 to $60,000 a year on a single income. At that time, that is fucking godlike money. So my uncle decided he was going to go to work for GM, and the way he did that is he sat outside the factory every single day as soon as he graduated high school, eating lunch, asking for a job. Every single day. He'd go up to the gate, ask if they were hiring. They say no, he'd sit out there and eat his lunch. And he'd go back the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next. 2 months went by, and they finally gave him a fucking job. That's how determined this motherfucker was to work for this company. He spent 2 months going there every single day, eating his lunch, asking for a job, before they finally gave him one. Now, my other uncle, he decided he wanted to follow in my grandpa's footsteps in a different way. He decided to go in the Army. And he went 3rd ArmA. Originally went to Italy, and then this little thing known as Vietnam kicked off. And ended up going to Vietnam. And I know almost nothing about what he did, where he went, anything. Because he never talked about it. And it wasn't that he was necessarily, you know, ashamed or he had PTSD or anything like that. My Uncle Carl was a guy who was at all times incredibly high on life. And I was just talking about this with my dad the other night, that I can never remember seeing him without a massive smile on his face. He was just a guy that loved every single thing about life. So he never talked about that shit simply because it was kind of a downer for him. And he didn't, you know, just didn't want to relive it, if you will. Which I always respected. I asked him about it one time. He said, no, we're not going to talk about that. I said, okay, and never asked him about it again. Now, my dad, he decided to follow the same route. He decided he was going to go into the Army because he had a family to take care of. He had a kid on the way, and he had bills to pay. So he went into the Army. He also went into ArmA. That's what my uncle did. And he was stationed, first station was Fort Bliss, Texas. In Fort Bliss for 2 years. And then he got a new duty station to go to Germany. That's when the rest of the family moved back to Michigan. He didn't want to take the family over to Germany with him. So family moved from Texas back up to Michigan to be with all the rest of our family. And my dad went to Germany for a year. So he was in Germany for a year, and then he hated it. He absolutely hated every bit of it. Mostly because when he got there, it was fucking dead of winter, and anybody that's been around Germany in the winter, it can be pretty fucking miserable. So he hated it, and he was offered the opportunity to get out early, so he did. So he got out, came back home, and went to work for the Postal Service as a mechanic, because that's what he did in the military. He was a mechanic, 3rd ArmA. So he knew how to turn a wrench. So that's what he did. He went to work at the first fucking mechanic's job he could find, which was for the Postal Service. And he ended up working there until he fucking retired. And he actually ended up retiring a little bit early. He was medically retired because his back was so fucked up after just years and years of doing manual labor.
So that kind of brings it to where I come in. Obviously, I came in long before he fucking retired, but I can actually still remember what he looked like with brown hair, which been a long time. But I've joked a couple of times about, you know, watching like the movie Red Dawn like it was training material and this and that. It, you know, it is a jest, but at the same time, it's semi-true. Again, you know, obviously, as you guys now know, military family. My dad has always been a huge history buff, especially a military history buff, and has always loved the history of the military, the tactics used, the equipment, just everything about it. So we grew up with a lot of that same love. Me more so than any of my brothers. I always got into it more than any of them did. So, you know, watching shit like Red Dawn, yeah, it was kind of like training material, you know, and we did have a lot of guns and we would go out and shoot and we were trained how to shoot. It wasn't just, okay, let's go to the range. It was, no, we've got land here. We're going to head out to the fucking back 40 and you're going to be trained how to handle this weapon system properly, not in a safe, controlled, this is a shooting range and take your lane. It's, no, you've got this many attackers, go. Find your cover, engage, eliminate. You know, that he, it sounds kind of crazy considering, you know, you're talking about kids who are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and he's talking about find, fix, and eliminate. And, but, you know, for us, it was like a fun game. We didn't look at it as like military training or anything like that. It was just getting to have fun hanging out with dad. It wasn't until much later in life that you realize, oh, holy shit, dad was like training us to fucking fight the commies when they invade. Like, fucking hell, you know? You know, because like I've talked about being 10 years old going through a fucking shoot house that the old man built. That's, you know, that was normal for us. For everybody else, now looking back at it, they're probably like, what the fuck? Like, Loster, did you have a shoot house when you were 10 that you could go play in?
I had a bouncy house.
Yeah, ours was kind of like that, but instead of bouncy balls, we just had bullets and targets. So, you know, shit like that was, like I said, that was normal for us. We didn't really think anything of it. And of course, now, you know, looking back, it's like, dad was a bit of a psycho. If, you know, there was such shit as like CPS coming and knocking on your door back in those days, they probably would have been looking at him a little cockeyed. So, yeah, bouncy tires for the sides of the house. So, you know, for me, military was always my go-to. I knew from, you know, pretty much the time I had a coherent thought that I wanted to go into the military. But I, at the time, because my dad didn't enjoy his time as much as he thought he would, he, you know, constantly told me, like, just don't go in the Army. Don't go in the Army. Do something else. Don't do, you know, infantry or anything like that. I know that's what you want to do, but do something else. Something that you can use when you get out. So I remember the first time, and this is going to sound like blasphemy, but I remember the first time I watched the movie Top Gun. And this movie got a lot of people to fucking sign up for the Navy. Didn't make me want to sign up for the Navy. I love the planes and the flying of it, but I didn't like fucking Navy because I don't like the ocean.
I like volleyball scene.
Yeah. Well, my happy ass don't swim in the ocean. Not voluntarily, anyways. So I knew I didn't want to go in the Navy, but I wanted to be a pilot because I always loved planes. I liked the infantry part of everything, but I had an odd fascination with planes. Like there was a point in time where I could have told you damn near every single type of aircraft used in World War II in terms of hostile aircraft, you know, fighters, bombers, so on. I could have named every one of them. I knew them by their fucking silhouettes. Not just by looking at the plane, but I could look at the fucking black silhouette of a World War II aircraft and tell you exactly what it was. So, again, I watched Top Gear and I was like, I know I want to be a pilot. So, time came, I got done with high school, and I went to join, went through the ASVAB, all of that stuff. Did great because, again, my dad had been preparing me my entire fucking life at that point to, you know, go into the military. So, you know, did great in the ASVAB, went to MEPS, and go through all of the bullshit at MEPS, and, you know, get through all the medical part, the physical part, and so on. Wasn't until the very fucking end that they tell me two things. One, my depth perception isn't good enough to be a pilot because one of my eyes is fucked up. I was like, okay, well, that fucking sucks, but what other options do I have? And this was talking to the Air Force. Because again, I wanted to be a pilot, but I didn't want to go in the fucking Navy, and I sure as hell wasn't going to be a Marine pilot because I still didn't want to end up on a ship ever. So they were like, well, you have, you know, this choice of options, and I was like, well, I want to do that, aviation mechanic. And they're, you know, are you sure, you know, you could do this, or, you know, you could really do this? And no, I'll just be a mechanic. You know, I'll just kind of follow my dad's footsteps and turn wrenches. And then, after everything's fucking done and over with, they said, oh, by the way, we're gonna have to deny you because of your tattoos. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're gonna have to deny me because of my tattoos? Like, I've already gone through everything. I've done everything. I've gone through all the fucking medical bullshit. Everything is done and over with. I have my job picked. What do you mean? And they're like, well, you have too many tattoos. Why the fuck did you guys even waste my time? Not only fucking bringing me all the way the fuck down here, going through all this bullshit, spending an entire day down here. Like, your fucking douchebag recruiter could have told me that day one. I went in and talked to the guy wearing a fucking t-shirt. He could have seen that my arm was sleeved out. You know? That, like, really, really pissed me off. So, it kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. And the gig was at that time, and again, this is years ago. This is before the more recent tattoo policy. Now I mean, shit, you can get away with like murder when it comes to tattoos nowadays. But back then, for the Air Force, again, this is for the Air Force, not the other branches. The Air Force didn't allow you to have more than 25% of a body part covered. I had well over that just on my one arm alone. So I was immediately, you know, no go for the Air Force. Again, I knew I didn't want to go in the fucking Navy. I didn't want to be on a ship. I didn't want to go into the Army, into the infantry at that time, because I didn't want to piss off the old man. And, you know, for anybody that's grown up with a father kind of my style, you'll know what I mean when I say you don't want to piss off the old man. And I didn't want to go into the Marines for the same reason. I didn't want to piss off the old man. So at that point, I was like, well, shit, I'm kind of fucked. Like, there's nothing I can do. So I said to hell with it. You know, I'm never going to get to fill that dream of going into the military. But I'm fucking 18. I'm out on my own. I gotta fucking find a job. I gotta go to work. I got bills to pay. Nobody's gonna pay it for me. I never had the luxury of going to college. I knew from a very early age, unless I somehow magically got a full ride scholarship, I wouldn't be going to college. My family didn't have the money for it. Never had that kind of money. You know, when you have fucking 6 siblings or 6 kids growing up in a house, can't put them all through college, not on a single income. So I knew I was never going to go to college. I got out of high school, and it was either the military or working world. Military didn't work out, so I had to go into the working world. Well, at that point, it was one of two options: either go to work turning a wrench or go to work swinging a hammer. That was kind of the only two things in the area. So I went to work swinging a wrench because my dad already was swinging a hammer. Because my dad was turning a wrench, I was like, I'll try something else, and I'll swing a hammer. So went to work doing construction. Did that for a long time, very long time, and got to a point where could run my own crews, and I had a lot of responsibility. And then 9/11 happened, and a new conflict started. Huge, boom to the military and this and that, and a lot of people were like, well, why don't you try and rejoin and this and that? And at that point, I was already so kind of set in my career path. It wouldn't have made any sense for me to try and make a career out of the military at that point. I was already too old to fucking really try and make a career out of the military. So, well, I guess I wasn't too old, but again, I was a little too set in my career already. So then, around 2008, a buddy of mine went to work for this company as a contractor in Afghanistan. And at that time, that was like a very foreign thing to most people. We had heard of some security contracting and stuff like that, but not on the scale of what was about to happen or what was happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. A lot of people don't realize the amount of contractors that were used both in Iraq and Afghanistan, especially during the height of everything and during the drawdown of everything. Those 2 points, kind of like 2006, 2008 area, and then again around like 2010, 2012 area, there was kind of two big spikes of contractors when things were really fucking bad, and then during the drawdown when we're kind of pulling everybody out and tearing everything down and kind of trying to rebuild what we just blew the fuck up. So my buddy Brad went to work for this company known as KBR, and he was in Afghanistan, and he came home on leave because the way they worked is you sign a contract for 11 months. You get to come home for 2 weeks, and then you get to make a decision if you're going to sign up for a new contract, basically. You sign up for a new contract, you have 2 weeks to decide if you're going to sign for a new contract. If you sign for that new contract, then you go back to Texas for 2 weeks. At the end of that 2 weeks, you get sent back over. Okay, so you do 11 months on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks reacclimation, 11 months back over there, if you sign back up. So he came home, he was home on his 2 weeks. Of course, we had a big dinner and everything, and everybody was hanging out. And, obviously the conversation of money came up, and he told us how much he was making, and he was like, dude, you guys gotta get in on this. I'll fucking do everything I can to get you guys in with us and this and that. So there was 6 of us all together that started putting in applications for anything and everything we could. I mean, anything from fucking doing laundry, cooking, mail services, construction. I mean, anything. Any job they had listed, guys were putting in applications for. Everybody got in, including my buddy's fucking 58-year-old father at the time. That's right, there was a fucking damn near senior citizen working over there as a contractor. Granted, he was a former Navy fucking badass, but still, he was old as shit, but he was over there as a contractor. So everybody got in, different guys got different jobs based upon, what qualifications had, and so on and so forth. Given my history, my job, I went into right what I was doing over here, doing contracting, building. So it was, building housing units, apartment complexes, schooling, community centers, shit like that. A big one was apartment complexes. Like, just like apartment complexes you would see here, 3-4 stacks with, or 3 or 4 stories, with, 4 rooms per story, or sorry, 4 apartments per story, so on. Schools, shit like that. Like I said, pretty much the exact same shit that you would see here. So, put in the application, get hired, and then it's go to work time. So what happens? Well, first thing you do is you end up going down to Texas, 6 weeks. Okay, why do you go to Texas for 6 weeks, especially if you're doing a job that you're already doing? Okay, well, it didn't matter what job you were doing. You went to Texas for 6 weeks for 2 reasons. Firstly, for acclimation. Okay, when someone tells you the line of, oh, well, it's dry heat because it's the desert, doesn't fucking matter. Hot is fucking hot. All right, 120 degrees is fucking hot. It doesn't matter if there's 2% humidity or fucking 60% humidity. You're sweating your balls off. So, big thing, acclimation. Okay, you need to get yourself acclimated to the weather, being able to work in that weather, being able to work in gear in that weather. And by gear, I mean safety harnesses, a vest, a helmet. You have to be able to do the job in that weather, okay? And just flat out survive. If you have a fucking heat stroke in Texas, you're not going to survive too well in Baghdad. Okay, so they have to make sure you're acclimated to the weather. Secondly, any jobs in which you were leaving the wire, meaning you were going off base, you had to be trained in certain tactical situations. Not because you were out there to be fucking Rambo. Okay? We weren't allowed to carry weapons. As a non-security contractor, you don't get to carry a weapon. Your only weapon is a fucking framing hammer and a fucking pocket knife if you have one, which you should. It is due to the situation that should the point arise where you have to defend yourself, you need to be able to do so. Okay? So, you have to go through basically a 6-week fucking crash course basic training, which includes full weapons training, tactical training, includes, especially at that point, by time I went there, which was 2010, at that point, IEDs were much more, not necessarily prevalent, but IEDs were understood much better. So you had to sit through multiple classes of how to identify IEDs, not how to fucking disarm them or any stupid shit like that, how to identify them, how to avoid them, so on and so forth, how to identify someone that potentially could be a suicide bomber, how they carry themselves, how to read body language, whether or not they're looking at you in your eyes, how their shoulders are sitting, how their arms are moving, things like that. We had to go through classes for that shit. And like I said, that was a 6-week process. So for us especially, it was more so doing a lot of PT, again, just to make sure that you can, swing a hammer for 12 hours out in the heat. But a lot of it was classes, learning different, tactical procedures, as well as field time, being out on the range, getting trained in kill houses, just how to move, how to shoot, how to move and shoot at the same time, things like that. We had to be trained in should that situation arise. And again, this wasn't to try and make us some super secret commando badasses or anything like that. I never even fired a fucking weapon while there. I will never fucking tell someone that I did. Okay? It would be complete bullshit. The PSD guys that we had were absolutely amazing. Some of the greatest guys I've ever met in my life. I would not dishonor them by saying that, we got into hellacious firefights and I had to protect some guys. No, fuck off. It was purely a precautionary thing. Okay? Now, the 2 instructors that we had, again, 2 of the greatest guys I've ever met in my life. Those 2 guys taught me more in 6 weeks than most fucking people could probably teach me in a lifetime. Amazing, amazing guys. They were always willing to give time and talk about anything and everything. Didn't matter when, where, nothing. If it was fucking 2 o'clock in the morning, you could call one of them up on the phone and say, hey, if such and such were to happen, what do I do? And they would tell you, do this. Or there's nothing you can do. Grab your ankles and hope for the best. Because they didn't bullshit you. That's one of the things that I really appreciated about that is they flat out told us, you know, look, if something does happen and you have to defend yourself and you run dry, or there's no way that you can eliminate that threat or yourself should the situation arise and you know you're going to get captured, there's nothing we can really do to ease it. You know, we could do like what they do to us and train you guys how to like resist torture techniques and stuff, but you don't have the time and it really doesn't matter. Nothing really prepares you for having your fingernails ripped off. Nothing prepares you to get decapitated on TV, which is what happened to one of the guys that worked for us a few years before that. The truck drivers that got captured and shit, they worked for our company. So this is shit that they all took very seriously, and that's why a lot of the knowledge that I have now, based on current real-world tactics, is from those two guys. The two instructors that we had, I'm not going to be mentioning their names because I don't know what they're doing right now. One was former team guy, one was former Delta. They had both been deployed multiple times. And as I said, they were absolutely amazing people. I mean, as human beings, they were amazing people. And, you know, they took their jobs incredibly seriously because they knew that they were preparing civilians to go into a war zone. And especially for those of us that were training with them because we had to go off post, they knew that we could find ourselves in a situation that we weren't necessarily ready for. As I realized the video stopped here. And as I'm sitting here like just babbling on, Nichols is still sitting here, lost or has taken off. Sorry, you're subjected to my rambling nonsense.
Oh, no, I'm enjoying it. It's fine.
Yeah, Dale, Jocko style of people, pretty much. So you go down there again for 6 weeks, and you know whether or not you're working off base is going to depend. You know, is going to decide whether or not you're training, or basically if you're just kind of hanging out. For us, it was cool because the two instructors we had were cool as shit, and they liked fucking playing on the range as much as we did. Even though, you know, they would smoke us and, you know, teach us how to do shit properly and everything. But if we weren't having a class, we didn't have shit to do. It was like, okay, go fucking hang out in our rooms or hang out in the common area and play some Xbox, or we could go down to the kill house and spend a couple hundred rounds of fucking 5.56 and have some fun at the kill house. Yeah, let's go do that. All right. So that's how we spent our time, was training, really, because it was fun shit to do. You know, when when you hear somebody like Jocko, you know, saying that he had the funnest job in the world because he got to blow shit up and, you know, shoot guns and stuff like that, I absolutely 100% believe him. Because that time, going to the ranges, going to the shoot houses, whether it be, you know, going into the live fire house or using simunition, which, by the way, I can tell you now, there was 12 of us that were working off base. 12 guys that were going through the quote-unquote tactical training. We had 2 instructors. Those 2 instructors would smoke us every fucking time when we were doing like simunition and shit. They would beat the shit out of us. Every single time. 2 guys would take out 12 of us. Like, they were out for morning fucking coffee. It was ridiculous how good those guys were. But, you know, they were teaching us the entire time. And we spent as much time as we possibly could downrange with those guys. Just to keep learning. And again, because it was fun. So at the end of that 6 weeks, head over to wherever your station is. So, again, companies like that, they have contracts all over the fucking world. Primarily then, of course, obviously it was the Middle East. So a lot of guys, for KBR specifically, ended up in Iraq. That's where the bulk of their contracts were in Iraq. They had contracts in Afghanistan as well as all over the place. Now, there was, I couldn't even tell you all of the different companies that worked contracts like this. I mean, there's KBR, there's Floor, there's Triple Canopy. Everybody's heard of Blackwater because they're the fucking security guys and the Halliburton and this and that. Well, Halliburton owned KBR. Okay, so all of that shit went down with Halliburton, all of that stuff. I technically worked for them. That's what all of that stuff was. And all of that fucking money that those guys were making, some of that was going in my pocket. Thank you. So you get sent over. Now, depending upon what job you're doing, that's going to depend what your contract is in terms of pay. Okay, so it also depends on what company you're working for. You can have two guys doing the exact same job for two different companies and make very different amounts of money. They can be doing the exact same job, but they're making different amounts of money because they're working for different companies that have different contracts. Okay, so you can have one guy doing the same thing I did for, say, $90,000 a year. You can have the same guy doing the exact same job, working for a different company, making $120 or $130. Again, doing the exact same thing. You could even be in the same fucking country doing the same thing, but for different countries and making pretty big difference in money. Now, for us, we were pretty lucky. KBR was pretty good. They had money. Floor was kind of renowned for being kind of cheapskates. And I say cheapskates, and you're talking about guys that are sorting mail, making fucking $80,000 a year. Meanwhile, fucking E5, who's over there actually fighting and dying, is maybe making 50. So get over there. When you first get in, you would go into what's known as receiving housing or something along those lines. And it's basically just a massive fucking tent. Holds like 20 dudes. So you get in there, you get your grave, which is your cot. And then if you don't already have one, you end up picking up a fucking gravestone, which what all of us referred to is your big ass foot trunk. You get one of those big, like, black Rubbermaid foot trunks as your gravestone, because your bed's your gravestone. There you go. So that was the entirety of your existence was in that foot locker when you got into receiving housing. The reason you went into receiving housing is because when you go in, you're replacing the guys whose contracts are running out. But there's no downtime. Right, so you have to overlap. So you come into receiving, usually guys are in receiving for maybe 2 weeks, possibly 3. Kind of rare, though, that you're in there for that long. And then you get moved to your CHU. Okay, your CHU is your housing unit. Basically, if you've ever seen the pictures of kind of the what look like kind of long hallways, and it's just like door after door after door after door after door on each side, that's your CHUs. Those are guys' fucking homes. Little fucking 1-bedroom studio apartment, basically. And even studio apartment. It's a prison cell with a little bit more room and air conditioning. So that was your life for the next 11 months. Wake up about 3 to 4 a.m. Depends on whether or not you want to work out before you head to briefing, whatever. If you want to grab some chow before you go in. So wake up like 3, 4 a.m. Go hit the gym real quick, work out for an hour or so, grab a shower, swing by the chow hall, grab some chow on your way into the morning briefing. Morning briefing consists of an S2 brief. You have some representative from G2 that shows up in there and tells you, you know, everything that's going on in the area that you're going to be working in that day. You know, so tell you what the weather is going to be like that day, tells you what type of activity has been going on in the previous 48 hours within that area, whether or not there's been heavy fighting, light fighting, you know, whether there's been any type of IED threats, whether anything's been spotted, this and that, just a full workup on what's been going on in that area over the last 48 hours and if anything is expected to change, so on, so forth. Okay. So that usually, depending upon, you know, where you're going, so on and so forth, usually take maybe 30 minutes to an hour. Again, very dependent. So that's when everybody's kind of grabbing their cup of coffee, hanging around, bullshitting a little bit, trying not to get yelled at for bullshitting too much while the fucking officer's up there, you know, telling everybody what's going on and this and that. So then, once all that's done and over with, head back, grab all your shit, get the trucks loaded up. Now, for us, again, going out of the wire, you don't get full military convoy, if you will, because we're also, again, we're civilians. You operate your own vehicles in some situations. So we had our own trucks that we used to transport, but we also had military escort. Now, anybody that's been there, a lot of people very easily recognize our trucks, the big ass white crew cab GMCs. They were kind of synonymous with the company. We had 2 of those for the crew. We had a 12-man crew. Okay, so we had 2 of those trucks. We could technically fit all 12 guys into those 2 trucks if we really fucking wanted to. Because you can, you know, ride guys in back and stuff like that. But we had the option to be able to ride. Some of us could ride in the actual military escort vehicles, which consisted of usually 2 Cougars. So when I tell guys no sweat that I spent a lot of time in the back of one of those trucks, I don't mean in ArmA. I mean in reality. I spent a lot of time riding in the back of one of those fucking trucks. Because I always volunteered to ride in one of those fucking trucks. Because, well, they have armor and a machine gun. So I went with that. So you would usually step off between 5 to 6. So we'd step off, head out, generally get to a job site around 6 to 7, depending upon when we stepped off, how far away it was, so on and so forth. And then we go to work. And it'd just be normal construction job. Nothing, you know, nothing special. And then around 6 or so, call it and head back. It was mandated for us. We always had to be back before dark. That wasn't like a, hey, we're not paying you overtime or anything like that. It was purely a security thing. We had to be back to the base before the sun was down. You know, which was completely understandable, especially considering the fact that, you know, we're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. You didn't get a day off. The only time you got a day off was a Black Flag Day. And anybody that's been there, you know that Black Flag Day is one of the greatest fucking days you can ever see a flag fly. Because that meant it was too fucking hot to go to work. So you got to stay home. And by home, I mean on base. So that meant, you know, you spent the day mostly catching up on sleep. Because you didn't really sleep all that much. Especially for me, like I have problems sleeping anyway, so you'd sleep for, you know, 3, maybe 4 hours a night, and then be back at it. So you'd spend the day trying to catch up on sleep, even though you're in your shoes sweating your fucking balls off because it's 90 degrees, even with fucking air conditioning. And every fucking couple hours or so, you've got an A10 taking off fucking right on the other side of a HESCO wall, and that's waking your ass up. And that was what your days consisted of. 7 days a week for 11 months. Waking up, going to work out, grabbing breakfast, going to briefing, drinking your coffee, loading up the trucks, driving out, swinging a hammer all day, loading the trucks back up, driving back to the base, taking a shower, work out again, grab some chow, take another shower, go to bed. That was it for 11 months. Now, were there times where shit happened? Yeah, I've talked about on the podcast before that guy getting the fucking building dropped on his dome piece by by the 50 cal gun truck. Guy started taking pot shots with an AK from a few hundred meters away while we're up on the building working. Nobody got injured. Nobody got hit or anything like that. They just got us down off the building, kicked in a fucking door, stuffed us in a corner. They went to work with a 50 cal and brought the entire fucking building down on top of the dude's head. Because, again, they weren't fucking around. When it came to our security, there was no such thing as overkill. Now, I have had people ask before how, what military was with you, like, how did they get selected, this and that, or something like that for PSD, personal security detail. That's kind of the, I guess, the cake job that guys in the military really wanted, especially at that point in time. So basically what would happen with that is they would go around to units who maybe not necessarily just rotated in, but they would find guys that had been there a couple of times before. Maybe they've rotated through 2, maybe 3 times, and they'd say, yeah, this guy's got a decent amount of experience. You know, he's a fucking E4. He's not doing anything. He's got no leadership responsibility. Grab him. Grab him. Grab him. Grab him. Hey, this guy's got fucking good squad lead experience. He's not running a squad anymore. Let's go ahead and grab him. We need a fucking officer to be in charge of these guys. Go ahead and grab this officer. And these guys are all from different platoons, different companies, so on and so forth. So they fucking create this amalgam unit of all of these different guys that have multiple fucking rotations under their belt and are really just kind of there collecting the combat pay at that point. They don't need the experience. They've fucking got all the experience they need. And it's kind of tossing guys a bone because, again, like I said, it's kind of the cake job. Everybody loves that job because you're still getting combat pay, but you're not going out doing active combat patrols or anything like that. You're just fucking hanging out with a bunch of civilians, especially when we were working. All they were doing was sitting around. You know, yeah, you got to pull security and, you know, keep your fucking eyes and ears open and everything, but it's not, you weren't targeted. We didn't get targeted the same way as like a normal military unit would. Plus the fact that we're working in generally calm areas. Now, does that mean stuff never happens? No, not at all. But again, it's a lot safer than what a normal combat role would be. So they dug it. We were kind of their meal ticket, if you will. So they really took care of us, and were, again, absolutely amazing people, greatest people I've ever met in my life. So we got to hang out with them every day, even, you know, not working. We got to hang out and bullshit, and again, I learned even more from those guys and getting to bullshit with those guys every day. And yeah, that was it for 11 months. And then come home, and again, you get the choice. Come home and you're done, or you can sign another contract. And you get to spend 2 weeks at home, go back to Texas for 2 weeks, and then go back over. Well, on top of the normal, you know, this is whatever your contract pay is, you know, whatever it is, you know, like for me, for example, 120. So if your contract is 120, we're also making $45 a day with per diem. So you get $45 a day to spend on whatever the fuck you want to spend it on, which $45 a day is a lot of fucking money in per diem, especially considering everything was free. We didn't pay for food, we didn't pay for lodging, nothing. So it's it's good money, obviously. So you've got your 45 a day per diem, got your 120 guaranteed your contract. Then you've got an extra 40 signing a new contract. Okay, so if you get a second year, and again, this is job dependent upon your re-signing bonus. So there's another 40. So absolutely, sign me up. I'll take another fucking 40, do another 11 months. So all said and done, it was 22 months. Have I stayed in contact with any of them? Yes. Unfortunately, not all of them are still here. But yes, I did stay in contact with a lot of those guys, as well as some of the guys that worked with me. Yeah, so that's 22 months spent there. And that's pretty much it. So then get done with that, and it's a hell of a life experience to be able to talk about, you know. And then it's over. There's, you know, there's not a it's not something that you can just keep doing. Unfortunately, some guys did have to keep doing it. Some of the guys that I knew that worked security, you know, they did have to keep doing it due to some unfortunate circumstances. They did have to keep doing it. And some of them aren't around anymore either. But yeah, that was the end of that. And then it was just, you know, come home and go back to work in normal everyday job. Which was weird. You know, it's anybody that heard one of the very early podcasts I did with Shannon, who is a good buddy of mine who deployed to Afghanistan. We talked about quite a bit of this at length, and you know, being in country and what it is to deal with that, and what it's like to be in country, and kind of the weird mentality you have to adopt when in country, and this and that. And I've obviously all the time guys come in here into the channel, especially when doing ArmA stuff, and ask if you're military and this and that, and of course, obviously, I say no. And it's weird because, you know, it's one of those where Shannon, who again was deployed to Afghanistan, is someone that I consider a brother because we have shared experiences in terms of you know, we've been there, done it, we've seen it. And guys often talking about, you just, you know, you can't understand unless you were there. And I can understand it there. I understand what they mean. You know, and Shannon has told me on multiple occasions that he considers me a brother without being a vet. Because I was there in the same shit. Which, you know, it means a lot when somebody like that can say that to you. And I remember Drum joking before how I had more combat experience than a lot of the vets that were in the unit. And I thought it was funny, and I realized he was actually kind of right. that, you know, it wasn't direct combat with me, obviously, but, you know, it was situations where shots were fired and this and that. And I didn't, because all the guys I know that have been there and so on, they were in, you know, had been in combat or, you know, been in situations, as to where now there are guys who are, you know, currently active or recently got out or whatever that didn't have to deploy because everything's on a drawdown now. There's nowhere near as many people being sent over. You know, it used to be guaranteed. You go in, you're going over for at least one rotation, probably 2 or 3. Excuse me, unless you got hurt or, you know, something like that. As to where now it's not as much of a guarantee that you're going to be going. There's a good possibility that you're not going to head to Iraq or Afghanistan, even though Afghanistan's kind of heating back up a little bit. We've actually, my buddy Stukas that was in the unit, he got sent over to Afghanistan, and also my cousin's son just got sent over to Afghanistan. So things look like they're picking up a little bit there. But yeah, so long, short, fucking hell, it was very long. That is kind of the background on how I ended up here, what I did while there, and how that whole process kind of plays out. Yeah, and yeah, Dale, at that point in time, we were taken care of very, very well. But again, this is also, you're talking, like I said, like 2006 to 2008, and then like 2010 to 2012. Those were kind of the 2 periods where it was really good money to be in contracting. Now, not so much. There's not nearly as much money in it because the contracts aren't as big. But yeah, exactly. In terms of the wives and husbands too, yes, running off with the money, yeah. There's a couple of guys that I knew where that exact situation ended up. Yeah, they come home, bank account's empty, nothing's left in the house, fucking all of that good shit. So yeah, guys, that's gonna kind of wrap it up for tonight. Yeah. Yeah, exactly what Vert said. Unless you get yourself fucking medicaled out, you were going for more than one. 2 pretty much guaranteed. 3 is a high likelihood unless you fucking find a scheme to get yourself fucking taken off the list, basically, and rotated to some other unit. So yeah, that's gonna kind of wrap it up for tonight, guys. Hopefully, you guys kind of enjoyed this one. I know it was more of me just kind of rambling and talking than anything else, especially towards the end here. Pretty long fucking podcast tonight. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one and you know, you guys understand a little bit better as to what I did, why I do things the way I do, and how I have the knowledge and stuff that I do, so on and so forth. Yeah, and in the future, when you know guys are asking about it or whatever, you know, if I'm in the middle of fucking shooting guys in black pajamas and ArmA, you guys can kind of fill them in a very fucking Reader's Digest version of what all of you guys know now. But you know, of course, if any of you guys have any questions or anything like that, or you know, if for whatever fucking reason you're thinking about getting into contract work or anything like that, you know, if you ever have any questions related to that kind of shit, or even, you know, if you're active or, you know, thinking about joining and, you know, or if you know you're about to be rotated and you're going into Iraq or even Afghanistan, even though I wasn't there, you know, if you have questions about that or whatever, what it's like, what I would recommend, any advice or anything like that, don't fucking hesitate to ask. You know, there's multiple guys, not even just myself, you know, obviously guys in the chat that are in, have been in country, have, you know, actual operational experience and stuff. Don't ever, you know, hesitate to ask about any of that shit. Because that's one thing, especially if you're somebody that's getting ready to go in or you are in and you're about to be deployed or whatever, you know, that's one thing that if you haven't already learned, you'll learn very quickly. It's not like what your dad told you or your uncle or so on told you that everybody is just gonna be an asshole and fuck you over and this and that. Yeah, that's gonna happen when you get to your actual unit and guys are gonna fucking bust your balls and stuff just to kind of make you one of us, if you will. But the military community, everybody just wants to basically make sure everybody makes it through this shit. So, you know, the main thing for any of you that are, you know, especially if you're thinking about going in or if you have hopes to go in one day, do not, for fuck's sakes, do not fall prey to any of these motherfuckers running their cock holster about, you know, oh, I was this, I was special forces and this and that and this and that and fucking, oh, I can't tell you what unit I was in and this and that, it's classified and so on and so forth. Do not listen to that bullshit. But at the same time, do not call it out. Okay? Please do not call it out. If you were not there, if you do not have solid evidence that you can say you're bullshitting on this, or, you know, hey, what camp were you at here? Well, that unit was never there because I was fucking there when that happened. Don't call the shit out. Just fucking ignore it. Okay? If you don't have a basis to stand on yourself, you can't call someone else on it. So just, again, don't fall prey to that shit. Don't fucking, obviously don't believe everything you fucking hear on the internet as you're listening to me telling you to trust me on the internet. But at the same time, don't try and be the fucking shining knight because you've watched a couple of fucking movies or you've seen Generation Kill a couple of times, so you're like, no, that's bullshit, that never happened. Don't. Okay? Don't. Somebody else that's been there, that's done it, will catch that motherfucker at some point in time, and he's gonna end up swallowing his teeth. It's not gonna be you that does it. Or if it is you that does it, let me know so I can buy you a beer. But yeah, just do those two things above all else. Don't fall prey to the bullshit, and don't call it out if you ain't got a leg to stand on. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one tonight. That's gonna wrap it up. I'm tired of fucking talking. I need some food. I need to hit the fucking head, and yeah, I will see you guys next. Maybe tomorrow we might be doing another mission tomorrow. We'll see. Well, here very quickly, Lantern, would you advise against joining the Army if you have a college degree and are unable to be an officer? No. I mean, I wouldn't advise against joining any branch. It depends entirely on what you want to do. What job do you want to do, not only while you're in, but while after you get out? That's the important thing. Or do you want to make it a career? And, you know, if you want to make it a career, what job do you want to do while you're in there? Is it, you know, infantry related? Then the Army or the Marines are going to be your best bet. You know, if it's more technical related, especially like guidance systems or radar systems or things along those lines, where you could potentially be moving into like avionics, you want to work as maybe not necessarily a pilot, but work for some type of engineering company in avionics or things along those lines, then Air Force is going to be your bet. That same thing kind of flows over to Navy, but Navy also is more so nuclear side of things. You can get some really cool shit in terms of nuclear qualifications, and things along those lines. Working on those ships, on the ships or the submarines, stuff like that. So it really depends on what kind of things you want to do. If you want to go into the medical side of things, Army is a great place to go for medical type shit. Spend some time as a fucking 68 whiskey, do all of that, come out. You've got fucking medical training. You can go into EMT, things along those lines. You can go in as MP, come out and fucking be a police officer, things like that. So yeah, it really depends on what you want to do. Personally, I would say, and again, this is from someone that wasn't able to do it. I didn't get the choice. Personally, I would say don't take someone else's recommendation on what branch you should or should not join, because most people that are in or that have been in are going to have some type of bias. Either, yeah, join this because it's awesome because that's what I did, or don't join this because it sucks and that's what I did. You got to figure out for yourself what it is you want to do, what job you want to do while you're in there for your 4 years, 8 years, 20 years, whatever, and what you want to do when you get out, if you get out. If you want to, keep it as a career, great, more power to you. You just want to do it to say you did it, do your time, and know what you want to do when you get out, and make sure you're set up fucking properly to do it. But that would be my advice. Don't listen to people on the internet. Figure out for yourself what job you want to do. So hopefully that helps, bud. So yeah, I'm gonna get the fuck out of here and stop talking. God damn it. So maybe you guys will see me tomorrow for an ArmA mission. We'll see. And then Saturday, again, I will not be here because I have a wedding to go to. And then Sunday, I will be here for OSUT. And then Sunday evening, we have Task Force Alpha's FTX. So hopefully you guys will be able to join me Sunday for that. And maybe tomorrow for an ArmA mission. We'll see. But that's it for tonight. Again, thank you guys for hanging out. And I'll see you all later.